Well, well, well. Good evening. Good evening. I am back with my partner of true crime, or my partner in creating as much trouble as possible. Kiki, it's good to see you as always. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you tonight, AR?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry to everybody that's been hanging out waiting on us. We've been behind the scenes, digging as deep into as many new things as we possibly can. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when we hear something, when we see something, we go digging in to verify and find out what we can as quick as we can so we can bring it to all of you. So a
Absolutely.
little bit of a cliffhanger for everybody, Swamp. I think we have some material that will come out very, very soon, don't you?
Oh, yeah. We have a lot to talk about tonight. It's so surprising to me how we never run out of content. And I don't even know if we're going to get to everything we have tonight. It's just so much. And I see there's so many people already in the live chat. Thank you so much for being here. We tried to
Definitely.
hold off a little because there was people live streaming, and so I was watching some of the shows earlier today. Everybody's had a really great show tonight on YouTube. I was watching Rory and Tommy a little bit earlier.
It's always very interesting because I like you, even while you and I are in the back doing a little bit of research and we're talking, I've got the other screen going where I'm bumping around to see who's live. We got Lana out there tonight.
Oh,
She's working hard, pumping away, getting some info out. Like you said, Rory and his buddy there, Tommy, are live and doing some hard work over there as well. And here we are, Kiki and I, as always, are dug deep, and we have some conversations that we want to get into in regards to the Idaho 4. Real quick, though, I know Kiki loves to do it, and I love to do it as well. I want to say a big shout out and hello to everybody in the chat because I would never be able to get to all of you excellent, fine people by name. But I do want to give a big shout out one of my favorite moderators, and I have some amazing mods just like you, Kiki. But my long-term, very first mod, Doodlebug, is back in the house. Very appreciative to see her. And I want to let everybody know tomorrow night I do have plans of having Doodlebug. I believe Kiki and I will be doing a live tomorrow night, and I want to have Doodlebug come up for a couple of minutes tomorrow night, and we're going to showcase some of her missing people flyers. We're going to allow her to explain some of those cases, as I really want to start putting some emphasis on that because it's so very, very important. But a lot of love. Mikey S, Echoes of Clarity. And I know most of you guys are all from the Kiki side of the world, which I don't blame you. I mean, look at Kiki right now in that circle. Isn't she just absolutely gorgeous? I mean, absolutely gorgeous. You take the floor now. It's your turn.
well, I mean, I don't really know how to follow that up, but thank you so much. That was really nice of you, AR. And you're looking great tonight, too. I wanted to compliment you. I love your new merch. I think that
Thank you.
hat is awesome, and I would totally rock that. So you're going to have to send me one. But I really like your new merch, your new background, the intros, everything is just, your show is just, you're taking it to the next level, and I can tell. I can feel the energy in the live chat tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. And yeah, I don't know. What do you say, AR? Should we get right into it? Go over
I
some.
think we got to dive in, but I do want to let everybody know because I think Kiki and I may just do something special tonight that we've never, ever, ever tried.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some call ins to where we will give you the number, and it's private, ladies and gentlemen. The only person that's going to know who's actually calling in would be Kiki, as she would be the only person to answer that phone call. But guess what? We'll have you live on the show. We're going to give it a shot to see how that goes. But first, we want to jump into some new docs, some new information that came out. And we were discussing this last night, Kiki, where I kind of gave you this idea and feeling that we all knew it was coming, that the prosecution was going to add a new member to the team, and it's now been announced they have actually added a new member to the team. It's Mr. Joshua D. Hurit. And I'm looking here for the document that you and I both know I had at one point, but we're going to bring that up. And I know you did a little bit of digging and you got a little information on him as well.
I do. I mean, I have his Wikipedia page here, but what was really interesting is in my Discord earlier, Meg P had shared a very interesting soundbite with this particular attorney, and the soundbite has since been taken off of the internet, which is really interesting. Always interesting when something gets removed. But I'm just pulling it up. Some of the things they were saying, and I'm not going to play the soundbite unless you want me to in the background. But he did serve. He served as a state representative, so he served as the highest, one of the highest offices in the land or in Idaho. And he is 100% a huge powerhouse attorney to add to the team. And there are some questions about that we'll get into, but let's let AR present that first.
Obviously, as many of you guys remember, not long ago, the prosecution actually motioned to the court for approval for them to be able to reach out and bring other attorneys to their team heading into trial for Bryan KOHBERBER. Many have suspected this is because they're going to kind of move Ashley Jennings down on the totem pole a little bit, because Ashley Jennings is actually the senior deputy prosecuting attorney, where this new gentleman is a special deputy prosecuting attorney, meaning that he's actually specialized. I don't know as to what. I think that's something that, the team of Kiki and I, we will definitely look into. We'll dig deeper into that. But they have filed and been granted the ability to bring him on board. And again, he's a special deputy prosecuting attorney, Joshua D. Hurit. There's his Idaho State bar number of 9527. So anybody that wants to look into that for yourselves and do a little bit of due diligence, that is how you spell the name. That's his Idaho State bar number. And he will be appearing as an attorney for the state. And I have a gut feeling, Kiki, when I go into the courthouse on April 9th and 10th, I'll be seeing this man for the very, very first time.
He really seems like a presence in the room. I wanted to read, so his description on Wikipedia is actually brief, and what I saw in that report is actually listed here. So I just want to say this. So he was a U.S. attorney for the District of Idaho. So on April 22nd, 2022, President Joe Biden announced his intention to nominate Hurwitz to serve as the United States Attorney for the District of Idaho. On April 25th, 2022, his nomination was sent to the Senate. On June 9th, 2022, his nomination was reported out to the Senate Judiciary Committee by voice vote. Senators Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn were recorded as nay. So it appears he's a very, he would lean blue then. And on June 13th, 2022, his nomination was confirmed by the United States Senate via voice vote. He was sworn in by Chief Judge David Nye on June 17th, 2022, and he resigned on February 13th, 2025. So I believe, if you listen to the news, so the soundbite that was taken down off the internet earlier, he basically was saying he was looking forward to a new career and challenges, and he was looking for a new, fulfilling, challenging career. And it looks like he's leaving this high, attorney job to join the highest murder profile case in the world. And, is it because they need his help? Or is it because there's somebody who, and this is just a speculation. This is just, for curiosity's sake, is this a notoriety thing? I don't know. But are they calling him in because they really, really need one of the highest performing attorneys that they have availability to? Or, what's going on here? And is the hand of justice becoming more heavy on one side than the other?
Well, in my opinion, and we've all watched Ashley Jennings. I can't even say her name correctly tonight. It's like I've been drinking, but I haven't been drinking. But and that's what even just thinking about Ashley Jennings does to me. But I mean, it's like we've watched her in action. She almost walks herself into traps within the courtroom. I mean, as we all were watching the Frank's hearing motion, it was really obvious. She was literally walking the state into a potential Frank's hearing. And even the judge had to stop her for a reason. And I do believe that the state is reaching out to bring in more power because they are seeing just how dedicated Ann Taylor, Massoff, and now Bicca Barlow are. That's quite a team. I mean, I really have at times questioned the way they were handling the courtroom. But as I've done more watching, more listening, more review, going back and researching, I can see what they're doing, and they're powerful. They're very, very powerful. And, it's kind of like how I spoke when Jay Logston was such a weak link for the defense. Now I feel as though this is the prosecution adding to their team, just like the defense did when they brought in Bicca Barlow. I believe this is the prosecution team bringing in more firepower for sure.
But that's 100% the way it appears to me. And then the chat was just talking, there does seem to be some confusion regarding this. So when I say he resigned, that's what Wikipedia is saying. However, the word in the chat is that, this might have something to do with the changing of the presidency. Because somebody in here, Trisha Echoes Clarity, said she thought that Trump had fired him. But obviously, if you look at the date, it really does coincide with right after the election. So, maybe he changed because the presidency, I mean, he was nominated by Joe Biden. Or, it could be something else. So it says he resigned in Wikipedia. That's up for clarification, it looks like. And so even if he didn't get fired by Trump, it might have had something to do with that. He might have resigned due to that.
Well, and look, I've made it very clear. I'm very careful in discussing politics. I'm very, very careful. But we've watched Trump make some big decisions and let people go from their position. So it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if this gentleman had been removed from his position. But that doesn't change the fact that he's a powerhouse, that being added in Idaho to the very prosecution team, I think it's a win for the prosecution to get him on board, because if you just really look at the dynamics of this trial, their weak link was going to be a very professional stand in front of the jury speaker that's going to be able to connect to that jury, because Ashley Jennings wasn't going to be able to do that. Ashley Jennings was not going to win the popular vote with anybody within that courtroom. Neither is Bill Thompson. Bill Thompson is an emotional speaker that's going to bring the tenacious attitude and the angry mold of things when he's cross-examining people. And Jeff Nye is very professional and will be the Ann Taylor of the prosecution team, where he's going to be very capable of leading his witnesses through their testimony, but he'll also be very good at attacking the defense witnesses during their cross-examinations. They needed a person that could step in front of the jury and garner attention and liking. And I have a gut feeling with the little bit that you and I have researched back and forth, and then also, while I was just kind of behind a closed scene right before we went live, I was kind of scrolling over to his public opinion of people that, the way they felt about him in the public opinion. And it seems as though he's going to be a jury grabber. And I think that's important for the prosecution. Very, very important.
That's interesting you say that, because we had that conversation about Johnny Depp and storytelling last night. And who is it that's going to, we're not saying that anybody's going to have his capability, but who is it that's going to captivate the jury enough to get them to listen? There's going to be somebody, and whether it's a Cy Ray or a Bicca Barlow, what's interesting as you're talking and we're talking about the different strengths on the prosecution side, I'm beginning to realize, are we looking at this new attorney to combat Massoth? Because if you think about it, Massoth is the federal attorney. Like, she's the one who knows the federal laws. That's her forte. Is she so good they're calling in the best they can get to combat at the constitutional level, or to know the federal part, or just to know the I don't know. But if you remember, that's her specialty on the defense team, or that's her forte.
I think that could be a good, probably a good way of looking at it, because Massoth is going to be the one that's going to be the jury captivator for the defense. That's probably most likely going to be doing the opening statements and the closing statements. If it were me as a defendant, that's who I would choose out of the group. So I have a gut feeling that's going to be her technique. And you're probably right. They're going to bring this gentleman in to maybe kind of, defend that for the prosecution. But I hope people understand this isn't the end of the line for who's going to be added to the prosecution's team. They are going to bring in the powerhouse of powerhouses that's going to be the all everything on their side of things, and then everybody will just kind of fall in line behind that. The reason why I say that is, if you just take a moment and think in the past of these high profile cases, O.J. Simpson had the dream team of defense attorneys that completely dominated the courtroom and the view of every juror in that courthouse. And then you get into somebody like the Casey Anthony case. Again, you had another up and coming powerhouse of a defense attorney that 100% controlled that courtroom. They have to be very, very careful. And I'm saying that on the prosecution side of things, that they don't allow this case to get dominated by the defense attorneys. Otherwise, because there's a great question right here by Melissa, and I don't want to ignore it. Do I personally feel as though BRYAN has a chance? There's one way I feel like BRYAN has a chance in this case, because I actually feel, and it's a horrible feeling, but I feel like this case is set up for the appeals court at the supreme level. I don't feel confident at the state level, unless, and this is the one chance BRYAN has, he has the dominant defense team that is able to hand walk this jury through not only compassionate measures of overlooking the very issues that everybody's tried to put onto Bryan Kohberber and his image and the way he handles himself, but I feel as though they need to truly dominate the storytelling to the point that it's interesting, captivating, attention-grabbing, and then that it makes sense, because we all know the prosecution's going to be going down a theory-based, circumstantial-based prosecution of Bryan Kohberber, and the defense has to get more of the common sense than the prosecution does.
Yeah, and we've seen her team, and we're actually going to play a soundbite in a second from some interesting information on warrants, and we've seen her team and how they deliver. And yes, there's going to be new people on it, but I just think she has a really good team. I wanted to follow up on what I was saying just a moment ago. Ms. Potts clarified when it comes to why there's confusion in the chat regarding the new, let me just get his name right, Joshua Hurwitz. So she says Hurwitz was a Biden appointee, and all Biden appointees were told to resign or be fired. Hurwitz resigned. He said, Mr. Wolf for the Senate, in my opinion. The cleaner. Oh, they're doing a Quentin Tarantino reference. I think Yeah. So, I mean, that's the confusion is he did resign, but he was told if he didn't resign, he'd be fired. So.
And that makes sense. Like I said, I'm definitely not one that wants to, claim that I'm politically capable of a good politic conversation, because I'm not. And this is a good statement here, and I'd love to get your feelings based upon what you've seen and what you know. Where Massoff is much more of a definitive speaker, which makes her more believable. Where Ann Taylor says, "I think" statements a lot, which makes her appear weaker in this individual. Doc's opinion.
I can't agree with you more that Massoff definitely, they both are great, and I'm not knocking him, but Massoff does seem to have that incredible ability to come in playing chess, where she knows where the conversation is going to go. She knows what the answer is going to be. And I think it's demonstrated in the very complex conversation she had with one of the investigators on the stand that we're going to get into, where there's these complex issues with warrant and exact wording. And she asked the question so many times and she got the wrong answer, but she just kept breaking it down and getting more detailed with what she was asking. No, are we talking about the copy? No, are we talking about the extraction? And she's not letting someone, she controls the conversation by understanding what the answer is. And if she doesn't get the answer, she knows the right questions to ask. Whereas Ann Taylor can deliver a narrative with her powerful alpha female voice and the way that she has her presence in the room. There's no question about it. Ann Taylor can put a point across. Whether she has the same style, I don't know. I mean, I watched her on the stand with Payne, and I thought it was more about, at that point, I thought it was more of a character thing necessarily than trying to trip somebody up on how they created the mapping and everything. But we'll see. I mean, but definitely, I think Massoff has demonstrated mastery in that several times, without a doubt.
And real quick, I'll give you my feeling from a defendant side of thing. If I had these two women, and Becca Barlow, we haven't seen her yet in full-on action. That's coming. But from what we've seen, Massoff and Ann Taylor are two different styles of attorney. And it's important that we have both on the defense team, because they complement each other so very well, where Massoff drives home the evidentiary points. She brings the facts, and she does it in a solid way that's understandable, easy to follow. And you don't want to get into a chess match with her in regards to being able to walk someone through the evidentiary value of something, where Ann Taylor is 100% going to dissect you on the stand, meaning on cross-examination. We've already seen her showcase her power when you have both Payne and Mowry and others take that stand. She makes them tell on themselves. Mm-hmm. She literally hand walks them into their F-ups. I mean, it's amazing to watch. And she just does it so nonchalantly. And I get what people say. Her saying, "I think" statements, or does she look a little bit weaker than Massoff? Maybe, because even if you remember, Swamp, at the last hearing that we were live on my channel, and I'm sitting there banging, and I literally, during that, while we were broadcasting it, was actually upset about the approach that Ann Taylor was taking. I even said, this is coming across as completely weak. And I had to backtrack. I had to take a step back and eat my own words, when then she completely started tearing down and really dissecting the words coming from the state's witnesses. And then it was the aha moment of, well, now I get it. It wasn't weak. It was methodical. It was absolutely methodical. And that's going to be so interesting to watch. Let me tell you, Kiki, I'm so excited to be in person with my own eyes and ears, being able to watch this firsthand and say, God, I wish I had that type of attorney when I was getting ready to go to penitentiary. I could have used that. It's going to be really interesting to watch and be able to dissect in person compared to what we see on a feed from afar. I want to feel it in that courtroom.
You know, you can, when you're in the presence of someone, you can, you know, so much. You know, people can walk into a room and before you say hi, before you have your salutations, you can generally know if someone's approaching you in a good or a bad mood. So you're 100% right. The energy, the feeling, I mean, it's the little things. Whereas a camera, which is far away, might not catch little types of body language. But even so, if a camera's focused on one person, you might be able to focus on another person. You also have a good clear shot of the other people on the defensive side, prosecution side, just seeing those people in the audience. I just want to build off what you were saying on Massoff for a second. Somebody in the chat, or Nothing Half Asked, had mentioned something about her smiling, how she has a smiling. And I want to bring up something about that. Her smiling is part of body language. And a lot of people who study body language, particularly if they're going to be on camera, they learn really quickly that if you lift the sides of your mouth, or even in life, when you first look at someone, when you smile sort of halfway, naturally speaking, instinctively, we receive someone better. And I bring that up because Massoff seems very reserved, but she's in complete control. She's in control of her body language and her face, her body. She's in control of, like I was saying before, she's a good attorney who knows what the answer is as she's talking. The reason I bring that up is sometimes we in life mistake meekness for stupidity, or not being as smart, or not being as assertive. And that's not what meekness is. By definition, meekness isn't being weak. Meekness isn't weakness. Meekness is having power and not using it. And it's very important for people to understand what meekness is. Don't ever mistake meekness for weakness. But I just want to say, with her smiling and stuff, it does to me demonstrate someone who's in complete control of herself and her environment. When you're even in control of your facial muscles at all times, I mean, that's someone in good control. I don't know. I just want to get that point out.
And it's so funny that you brought that up. That shows the type of connection that you and I have. And I think that's why you and I work well together, even because behind the scenes, our thoughts tend to even rotate in the same direction, just different angles and different ways of getting there. But right before you started that discussion, in my mind, one of the next points I wanted to make was being able to see both Massoff and Ann Taylor look at each other and smile, almost like, we got them. We got this now. Based upon what they just said on that stand, they were almost so confident. And you know what? A jury is going to see that. Mm-hmm. They're going to feel that. And it's not like they're being unprofessional or they're being narcissistic or anything of that nature. They smiled because they were confident, not only in the presentation they had just made, but the fact that they had just guided the prosecution into breaking down before everybody's eyes. And they were like, here's the aha moment, everybody. I want you guys to really think about this. Here's the aha moment. Great thinking, Kiki. That was just an amazing thought that you had. Oh, and God, it led right into how I was feeling, what I wanted to say. And I couldn't agree with you more.
On the same note, it brings me back to this. I have so many questions swirling around in my mind about how they found Bryan Kohberber. And I know everybody is probably content with what they read in that December document that Jay Logsdon is saying they found Bryan Kohberber via IGG on the 19th. But I have seen enough and I've talked about enough when it comes to the phone, the warrants, and all different things, the federal grand jury subpoenas. I have other questions and curiosities regarding how they found Bryan Kohberber. when it comes to 4chan, the U-Haul, Chief Fry, I've got a million questions. But my question is, what we saw from December, like mid-December to like January, everything revolved around the 19th and finding Bryan Kohberger. And just what you were saying, when they assert their confidence, they're trying to show their confidence to the judge, not only in what they say, but in their body language. And I'm not the first person to say it, but is it like the defense is just giving the prosecution enough rope to, you know, trigger warning, hang themselves? Because if the narrative is the 19th, what else do they know? What, you know, I don't know. But it did appear that way to me after 2 years of not having any questions answered by the defense, how they found Bryan Kohberger. All of a sudden, oh, well, we found him. And we know now that, you know, in December of 2024, but we've been asking for 2 years. So there's something that will not settle with that. And I just feel like that's going to be a big thing in court. And I find it suspicious that Ann Taylor quickly agreed to it, Logsdon agreed to it, everyone's agreed to it, and they don't want to talk about it anymore. Yep, it's the 19th. We're not going to bring it up. Oh, we're not going to bring up these issues with this. And nope, nobody's talking about it. Why? Because I got a lot of questions. I'm sure, you know, people are commenting. I wonder what you guys have to say. Let me see what you guys are saying.
I'm over here. I'm watching comments because there's just amazing questions happening. I mean, literally, Swamp. The one thing I realized is we could literally just engage with the community for the entire show and have the best of questions and the best of conversations. But as Kiki's kind of catching up with some of the comments over here, I want to throw a question out to all of you in the community, and it's just an opinion-based question. I just want to know where people kind of feel. If you were a defendant, let's say you were Bryan Kohberger in this case, and you had the opportunity to have either Ann Taylor or Massoff do your opening statement to the jury, which one of those two would you pick? Would you pick Ann Taylor, your lead attorney? That would be one. Or would you go with Massoff, two? Or do you even inside feel as though it would be smarter to go with someone like a Bicca Barlow, who is your you know, she's going to be a showcase too, because that's your DNA, all everything expert. So you could have her as option 3. So you got Ann Taylor 1, you got Massoff 2, and then you would have Bicca Barlow as 3. And Giovanni, it's great to see you. It's been a minute since I've been able to see you and say hello. It's great to have you in chat. Always thankful for you. Nothing half-assed. It's great to see so many people, Kiki. So many people, and these are just Miss Potts is in here. Miss Potts is always so busy, and she, you know, she works, she runs her own channel, and then she comes to spend time with us. I see the beautiful Trisha here. Echoes of Clarity is in the house with it. It's just amazing to see everybody in here.
I'm so grateful we have a good crowd today. We know you could be anywhere, and we're really happy you're here. I saw 2 things in the chat I just want to address. So I did see Tara commenting that they talked about that date the defense did long before December, but I have been following this case so closely, even in and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not contradicting you. I'd love to know where you heard it before then, because the first time I saw it was in that paperwork Logsdon said, where he said the defense found them, because the last hearing I heard them ask, I believe, was in May of 2024, still not knowing how they got to Bryan Kohberger, but I could be mistaken. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is I saw Rolo in the chat. I'm not sure which chat he's in, but I thought it was really interesting because Rolo, if you remember a long time ago, you commented when we first met, you commented on one of my videos and you told me to keep my eyes open for the audio video expert. And they go into, we actually have a really cool, interesting, unclassified FBI document that does talk about the expert. But I just thought of that because I saw Rolo and you were doing shout outs. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's over in your chat, to be honest with you. But
oh.
yeah. I think that's a good segue. I know you had some stuff in regards to some footage, which obviously would be a main key to why we have these forensic digital experts. And typically Unique, I believe, is a member of your channel now for 8 months. I believe that's your channel, correct?
Oh, thank you for flashing your member badge. Typically Unique. Thank you for being a member. That extra support, it gives me so much motivation. I love my members. Thank you for the extra support. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
And let me tell you, Swamp brags about all of her members behind the scenes. She's so proud of all of you. She takes great pride in everybody that supports her. And I have to hear it and hear it and hear it. It's almost like a running debate, who's got more members. But no, that's absolutely awesome. Typically Unique. Definitely appreciate that. Anybody that supports Swamp is a friend of mine for sure. For sure.
Likewise.
So in regards to the digital stuff that we were talking about, did we have a document for that, Swamp? I'm trying to remember.
Yes. So in the state's response to the motions in lemony number 12, I think it was, it is the
yeah, I do have it.
Yeah, the state's response to the defendant's motion in lemony number 12, make and model the suspect vehicle. Now it's funny because so this was inspired by a TikTok that Tonka shared in my Discord from Seagirl. And we were watching this and I saw something in there. I'm like, what the heck? I've never seen that before, ever. And, you know, so it's just one sentence, but I'm going to read it to you. And then I'm going to segue into another quote regarding Snapchat. And I thought it would bring up a really good conversation. Some things that we heard a long time ago that we're now reading in the documents. So it's on page 48.
Sorry, I had to track down my mouse. Like I was telling, I'll make everybody laugh for me. I was telling Kiki behind the scenes. It's a white screen on the computer with a white mouse arrow. And because of the vision issues I've been dealing with, it's like just trying to track that thing down could take me 45 minutes.
I was saying they make those little things you could put on your cursor, like a big bullseye or something. Like, I wish I knew how to do it right at the top of my head.
So this says page 10 of 15. You're saying it's what page now? I'm sorry.
48. 48.
Okay. So let me see, because these say, all right, so that's now 8. So am I way off or what? Because this says 18. So is there multiple docs?
Oh, you don't look at that because at the top you're on page 27 of 51.
Oh,
the little box at the top you can type in 48.
Now I figured. So we want to go to 48.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that makes it easier. Thank you. Thank you. And I was actually there to begin with. That's horrible. Yeah. All right. So here we are.
Okay. So to answer the kind of the question I segued with, the expert, let's see. Well, this was to Travis Shirley. The expert is Anthony Imel, Operational Technology Division, Forensic Audio, Video Image Analysis Program. And this is from Quantico, Virginia. And this is just interesting. I'm not going to read everything, but I want to read, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think this is what you're looking for right here.
There are 5 of them. Oh, yeah, you have it up? Here. Oh, you have it up. Okay, sorry. I was looking.
I'm drawing all over this page. Like me and this mouse, I give up. I give up.
You guys, AR is going to have better eyesight in about 30 days. Just give us a time.
What is going on? All right. I give up. Anyway, that's what you're trying to read.
Absolutely. And you can see AR's already got the line highlighted that I thought. And like I said, I know a lot of people are covering the make, model, and vehicles of the car. We're not going to go over that tonight, but I just want to bring up this one word that I saw in this Seagirl video. And that is, right, like AR has highlighted, HQQ031715, 7 MP4 video files, balcony video depicting questioned vehicle received 11/21/22 examined. Without going into, because a lot of these are inadmissible, and it goes on in the verbiage they have after this, and I've seen this covered on Truth Transparency. I don't know if Rory and Tommy were talking about that tonight. They were talking about part of this document as well, but this right here, I've only heard from Seagirl bringing up this balcony. And do you know what that means to me, you guys? Is somebody, well, obviously somebody was out on a balcony and recorded suspect vehicle 1. I mean, I'm just curious. Chat, tell me what you mean. Is this what we heard about somebody on a balcony that heard something and had a recording? Is it real? I mean, is this the same thing we were heard referencing? It makes me just so curious. And then it's like, well, why were you out there? Were you out there having a cigarette? Was it a party that, you guys were all awake? Did you hear something scary that brought you out on that balcony? Did you see something scary? Like, was there dogs barking when you were out there taking video of suspect vehicle? Did you hear Murphy? Like, that's a big thing for me, is, did you hear Murphy? Was there a dog running around? Was the door open? Was the sliding glass door open? If you're on the balcony, you would have had a shot right to the sliding glass door. We know what they can see out front because the story was elaborated on so much, whether it's real or not. There's more, but I want to turn to UAR and have you give me some thoughts on that.
Well, kind of on it, just a little bit of thinking points on this. That balcony could be in a couple of different places, my opinion. I would look at the Linda Lane apartments where the cameras, obviously caught the so-called car turning around and driving back away. But we heard people walking around in that area and moving around. Could there potentially be some sort of video from there? Could it be over? And it's crazy to think about Dot coming out and making statements and then getting heavily torn apart as being either dishonest or lying. And now there's potentially evidence of a balcony because they seem to have been going in and out, onto a balcony doing whatever they were doing. I know the story was a little bit different, but a big shout out to Tommy Jude, who has entered the building. Mr. Tommy Jude with Once Upon a Crime Time. It's good to see you, my friend. I definitely do appreciate the invitation with your great moderators and team over there. They've been working to try to get me onto the show, and obviously our schedules have conflicted a little bit, but we're discussing maybe late May, if that's a possibility. We'll see how that goes. But Tommy, it's great to see you.
It's really good to see you. I caught some of your show earlier, and my favorite part was when you guys were going over the BMW, like that. That's just, you guys had a lot of good info regarding the sounds, and I thought that was great. I just wanted to bring that up. It's interesting. Tonka brings up Tonka made a comment that says, Wakanyan Tonka says, I think that's a video from the building that sits across to Queen on Linda Lane. And are you talking about the ring cam balcony footage? I don't know if that's what you're referencing. The reason I didn't think it was that one is because it says the 5 MP4 videos and 2 WMV videos depicting the question. Wait, is that the balcony one? Yeah, no, 7 MP4 video files, balcony video depicted questioning vehicle received on 11/21/22. So that, I think Olivia, if I'm not mistaken, received that footage within days. And I think, it was possibly cloud footage, but I don't know. And I think that's a great comment. I just wanted to bring it up because that made me curious when I read that. So
definitely. Real quick response. Tommy, we all will have you in our hearts and our prayers on the 18th when you go in for surgery. We only want the best for you, health-wise, and everything surrounding that. I myself will be under the knife on May 5th, so I'm right there with you. But I know Kiki shares the same sentiments, and I'll let her say hers. But we definitely send you a lot of love, Tommy. Lots and lots of love.
Tommy, I'm just reading that now that you're going in on the 18th for surgery. Obviously you're all in all of our thoughts and prayers, but I just want you to say, we all know how strong you are. All right.
You know, it's a
All
funny
know how
story.
strong you are. And we know, I'm sorry, Aaron, what were you saying?
No, I'm sorry. I cut in a little bit. I didn't know you were talking. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's a funny story because Tommy and I go back far before our Facebook or far before actually our YouTube careers. Tommy actually hit the platform before I did, but the two of us knew each other even before we made the venture to YouTube. And we were like friends that argued a lot in the past. We met on Facebook, but we spoke off Facebook. We spoke as normal men. We would argue like two old men. We would yell at each other, and then we would make up and we'd be friends again. But Tommy and I have always just really had a lot of love and a lot of respect for each other, whether we agreed, didn't disagreed, whatever it might have been. We've always had the best of thoughts for each other, both health wise, life wise. And when drama broke out between, Tommy and I, we easily got behind the scenes. We talked about it back and forth in private. It was handled quickly. It was handled the right way. And we moved forward. And lots of respect to you, my friend. I'm glad to see that you're hanging in strong, and that you keep, working. You've got a big following of people that love and adore you. You got a bigger following that even respect you more. And I know Kiki's one of them. I'm one of them. And we only want you to be healthy and continue your thing, my friend. Continue your thing.
Yeah. And Tommy made a comeback. I'm not going to repeat it because no negative self-talk, Tommy, first off. But he made a comment when I was saying how strong he was. Tommy, we know how strong you are because we know the last time you went in for surgery, we were all praying for you. And we put a post up and literally you were live streaming the next day. That's how strong you are, is you're able to show up for your audience, even when you're recovering and healing. So that's what I was meaning, is we do know how strong you are. We've seen it before. So we're going to pray for the doctors and all the nurses, and their hands be, that God is with them while they're doing your surgery. Same with you, AR. We're all thinking about you.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. I'm sure Tommy does as well. And again, I want to say a big thank you to everybody within our community chats. They're sharing so much love out to Tommy. I know it makes a big difference, not only in his day, but also his outlook into the future, and probably even makes him feel a little bit more at ease in regards to the surgeries that he'll be facing. And that will help walk him through that. So I don't know, Swamp, if I were to just get right to the point and ask you directly, where do you think this video depictions of the question vehicle would come from? I mean, what in your mind, just based upon what's listed here, what does this kind of lead you to believe where those would be?
Okay, so the audience has to understand this is a complete speculation. I will tell you my thoughts. I'm basing them off of basically nothing, but here they are. So the comments about Dot, okay, let's just make sure we're repeating what came out of the person's own mouth, which is they were telling a story for somebody else. Now that could mean anything. It could also mean that somebody did have some knowledge of the early investigation, and for whatever reason, they tried to present it in a certain way. So I have seen enough in these new documents to know some of the things I was being told were right. And I'm not suggesting that anybody's character or anybody was, I'm not trying to rehash any of these things. But basing it on just that one thing, the only balcony footage I ever heard we'll call it an early rumor. So from this point on, I'm not going to use the word Dot. Let me say early rumor. There was an early rumor that the balcony it's like if the house is here, I should probably pull up a map. Hold on. I have the virtual tour right up here. Let me see if I can get a shot of it. But there is a house with a balcony right. Let me present my screen. Hold on. There you go. Okay. So if you look at this virtual tour, let me see if I can point with my cursor. Right here was what they were suggesting. There's a house right here with the balcony. Let me see if I can get an aerial shot here.
And if you guys remember too, while she's kind of getting a look at that, remember when that newscaster was standing right in front of that opening, just kind of over the top of the police SUV that's sitting right there? Do you remember the car that was driving up and back and around back there that so many people were talking about being the white Hyundai Elantra? And I mean, it was literally during the newscast. Do you remember that, Kiki?
No. Wait, say it again. Wait.
Okay, so if you look at this picture that we have presented, right over the top of where the backed-in police cruiser is, okay, there was literally a newscaster right after this homicide happened, standing about right there, doing a newscast live when a white car drove up and around that back area behind the house, what would be deemed to be Walenta Drive. It was literally caught, and everybody dissected it, and many, of course, started saying, well, there's Bryan Kohberber's car, there's his car. But the reason why I'm referencing that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very balcony that Kiki is pointing to that would be back in the home where it's actually described Dot was when they were having the party the night of the crime. Right over the top of that is where that white vehicle would have been driving.
That is so crazy because I didn't hear about that back in the day, but somebody did show a still shot of that. I think it was maybe posted in Reddit on my Discord, and gosh, I totally forgot about it. I'm glad you're bringing it up now.
Yeah, I mean that was all over the place for a long time, and I remember everybody that had found Bryan Kohberber guilty even the day of arrest. They could not stop showing the picture of that car. But now that you're talking about a balcony with possible images of that car, I'm thinking, just in visualizing what you're showing right now in reflection to where that car would have been driving back there during that newscast, that would have been the perfect place for somebody to have been able to get some sort of video of a car driving by.
I mean, absolutely. And, we're just doing this speculation right now, but clearly, it appears that there are videos out there, whether they're being utilized in court or not. And if there's video, it just makes me think, what do they have for maybe witnesses? Just if somebody had if they were triggered enough to take a video.
And typically unique, I do understand that maybe Dot's not real. We're not saying Dot is real.
That's not what I'm saying.
No. I don't know Dot. I don't know anything about that individual.
That's why I wish we hadn't even brought the name into it. But I mean, I also,
you know what though? I mean, it is what it is. Look, I'm going to make a quick statement just because I want to make this statement. Many people in the past, when WSU Kim came out and shared her version of a story, she gave what she felt people attacked her, and they attacked her hard. And the only thing I can say at this point is everybody just needs to reflect back upon some of the things that she had to say. And I'm not saying everything was absolutely true. I don't know. But I sure know a lot of the comments that I listened to that woman make, and I compare it to the very court documents now being shown of text messages and activity on cell phones with Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, whatever might be going. Now things start to somewhat add up. And I'm not putting Kiki on the spot here to agree with me because she absolutely doesn't have to. But I'm just saying, we all watch and analyze every single thing about this case. Everybody breaks it down to the finest of details. Just remember, sometimes some of the things that we dismiss, that we say couldn't possibly be true, at least have some merit and truth to it, whether we like it or don't. It doesn't matter at that point. We're now looking at court documents, ladies and gentlemen, court documents, and who's going to argue with that? Sorry, Kiki.
No, you're fine. I know I should probably address this, but can you? Yeah, I was gonna say, can you put me on full screen? I should probably address this to my audience because I mean I just haven't talked about this in a long time, and you guys, whoa, you guys all know.
Well, you said you wanted the whole screen. I'm trying to get rid of me and just put you on full screen.
No, don't put me on. Yeah, we're like frozen on my screen.
I don't know.
Am I frozen on your screen? Am I frozen, you guys? You're frozen on my screen.
Yeah, you are frozen, actually.
Let me back out. I'm going to come back out.
Everybody, you had the best picture right there of Kiki you're ever going to get. A still frame picture on the Convicts.AR Hayes live. She'll jump back up here as soon as she can. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys do have questions, don't forget to go ahead and put them in the comments. I will do my very best. And I want to say thank you to Phil. Thank you again for the gifted 10 Swamp Rose memberships. I know that makes a difference. She truly appreciates you, and I appreciate you as well. And she clicked back in. Is she back?
I'm here.
You're here. Okay. I was just letting everybody know that Phil Biggs again put 10 memberships for the Swamp Rose channel, and how thankful of that we are.
Oh, thank you for the blessing. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Phil. Gosh, were you in the middle of telling them something when I came back in, or do you want me to keep going?
No, I was just trying to fill in because the star of the show, I was waiting for the star of the show to come back, and that's why I was playing fill in.
All right. So I should probably address the whole WSU Mom Kim thing. Since we're talking about it, I try to avoid the subject all the time, but I should take a minute to address it. I can't pretend it's, the subject isn't there. So here's the thing. If people are asking me, is the story real? Is the story not real? All I can tell you is I have not personally vetted WSU Mom Kim. What I did for my audience was I had Daniel DTS come on my show and explain how he vetted Kim to the audience. Do I know if Kim, as far as I will tell you this, if Kim isn't, as far as I would be heartbroken if that's not real. I thought that was her real and raw reaction when I interviewed her. But you know what? Everybody who follows my show knows I've been tricked and hoaxed like a dozen times, and who knows. But as a human, I liked Kim and I believed her, but I could be wrong. I don't have the greatest discernment. I do my best, but I personally hadn't vetted her information. I trusted the work of Daniel, and I had him come on the show and explain how he did it. So if you've seen my WSU Mom Kim interview, it's for me, it's riveting when I listen to it, but it's about an hour long and she answers all of our questions. But yeah, I don't know, but I do know we have verbiage about the Snapchats now, which I didn't have when I interviewed her, and it matches what she's saying. Whoa. And now there's documentation in, like, when I'm looking at these new documents, I brought a little like blurb to read where it's basically saying we're not just requesting we want the deleted Snapchat, like we want everything, because we know there's deleted info we don't have. They don't say that, but
I believe this is a part of the discussion here, and I'm just trying to get somewhat in the same line but also caught up. There's a discussion that I've seen going around that there's potentially deleted messages and other things between Dylan Mortensen and her father. And then there's also like Snapchats and things like that that have been deleted. Am I on the same page? Am I right? I'm trying to.
I'm going to read the quote. I'm just going to read it because I'm not going to say it. I don't want to differ from what the actual court document says. So I'm going to read this. Hold on, for the 5th time, because I just like repeating myself. I'm going to say everything 3 times tonight. It says, so I don't have the page number on this, but in section 10 on this, on line 1, so I'm going to read you all 4 bullet points under that. And this is off of the idaho.gov website. It says, they were documents to include artifacts and content demonstrating a variety of user interactions, including incoming and outgoing native text messages, incoming and outgoing Snapchat messages, artifacts indicated by the application, identifier, and then it gives a website, and then it says voice calls conducted via Snapchat and native phone dialer. And then this is the line where I'm talking about deleted, because this is talking about, altering. So the actual user doing it. And it says creation, modification, or deletion of, okay, so it wasn't alteration. So creation, modification, and deletion of multimedia files such as images and videos. And then just to finish up the 2 other bullet points, application usage logs showing when specific apps were opened and closed, and internet browser artifacts and cookie data showing access to particular websites or internet-based services. You guys, if you don't know how powerful cookies are, oh my God, you can have the best antivirus in the world. You've got to pay attention to the cookies carry like all of your information.
God, I never thought I could get busted for so many things. And then my wife found out the websites I was looking at through my cookies. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually not kidding, but I'm kind of kidding. I agree with you. Like, the data that's saved in the background of some of these devices that we utilize, like cell phones and computers, it can tell on you in a heartbeat. You think that delete button literally gets rid of things, and it doesn't. It is there, and it's deep in there, and they find it in a heartbeat. So I agree with you.
I mean, there's another aspect just from your personal usage, like just basic users in Google can look up, they can't look up your Google searches, but they can generally tell like your activity in Google. Google rats on you. And there are also ways, like I've been told, like I can figure out who's Googled my name, Swamp Rose. Like there are ways for me to get that info pretty easily and free from Google. And I could find out, oh, AR Googled my Swamp Rose 3 times last night. Sorry, AR, I don't mean to use that example.
Yeah. I know I'm stalking you from afar, and you know it.
Sorry, AR.
Well, and I'll tell you, I kind of learned about a lot of this stuff when I was younger, because like everybody knows I was fraudulent, and a part of my criminal activity involved getting people's personal information for credit cards and things of that nature. And you leave a trail. Not only you as the person that is the victim, but even the person going to take advantage of the victim leaves another trail. And this is what law enforcement can literally use to, connect the dots. And I would, it's just so crazy to me. How would someone, and I get people are going to utilize the thought process that, Dylan Mortensen's 20 years old. She wouldn't think about that type of stuff. But how would you not know that if you went in and erased messages or photos out of Snapchat, how do these people not know that can all be retrieved? It can all be retrieved.
I mean, the way that I look at it is, even with like, even any activity on Discord, like, or any app or any phone, if you're going ahead and altering it and deleting it, I mean, you really are making it a lot more difficult for the investigation. So they might have thought that their forensics would never be looked at. They could have thought, okay, I'm not the perpetrator. I'm not part of that, you know, so they're not going to look at the forensics of my phone, and I'm deleting this. I want nothing to, I don't want any, I don't know. I don't know how they don't know that, but I do know that people are aware it's pretty damn hard to get those deleted things back. Like, you do need a warrant or a subpoena in order to do that. So maybe they just thought it, you know, because it was encrypted, it was, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just speculating around why
in Idaho, you're saying they need a warrant to get, you really think Idaho needs warrants to get things? You don't think Idaho just does it on their own? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, sorry. That was
we can talk about that, because I have a soundbite to show you about warrants, you know.
A lot of people are asking you real quick, Swamp, what doc were you reading that from?
I have asked, let me see if I got a answer to that question. I will get an answer to that question, but I asked to Discord, and I'll tell you who posted it. Hold on.
And real quick, Tommy Jude, at the beginning of this live, we actually discussed the new attorney for the prosecution team. And, you know, the overall census of feeling is he's going to be a good addition for the prosecution. I think he's going to bring some power to the team. He's going to be a much better voice and I guess presence within the courtroom compared to an Ashley Jennings. So I think it's a win for the prosecution on that one.
So a beautifully broken woman, or the other angel, brought this story to my Discord, and she has a channel, Beautifully Broken Woman, on YouTube, and I'll reach out to her. She's actually usually here in the chat tonight. I just haven't seen her yet, but I just don't have an answer to it. But she's a great resource and a creator who frequently posts documents, and you can see this one comes right from the Idaho.gov website. You can see
that just looks like a shining light.
Well, the black part was what I was emphasizing, but let me try it again. Hold on. Let me get some.
Now, okay.
Sorry, I have tape over my camera that I'm so technical. Okay.
I think it's amazing that she shines that. Like, you guys have to understand, like, I'm looking at the computer screen where Swamp is right there next to me, and then she just shoves this phone in my face, like, hey, by the way, here's my phone.
That's kind of my thing.
You're talking to a blind man. A blind man. But
the blind leading the blind.
Shoot, what the hell was I? I had something else starred that I wanted to throw your direction, because I always want to kind of pay some attention to what people are having to say. You would know a little bit more about this one here, Kiki, because you dealt a little more with both of these individuals. Did DT Daniel believe her, meaning WSU Kim, when she was on his show? Did he have an open mind at one time? And yes, I could answer part of that. Daniel with Drunk Turkey at one point did have more of an open mind than what he has today, but I'll let you answer the rest of that one.
Okay, first and foremost, I'm 100% not speaking for Daniel. I'm trying to recall his remarks to WSU Mom Kim, or what I've asked him. So, you know, AR, if you want me to bring up the clip, we can play it. I own the clip. I mean, it's not like it's, but he basically says that he felt at the time she may have been mistaken about the time. So his biggest thing, I believe, was that he was concerned. She was confused because he was really, if I was under the right impression, he was very convinced about the timeline. And he's like, well, how can the 911 call have possibly been at 11:56 if they were Snapchatting at 9 a.m.? He's like, I think she went and picked up her daughter and she's mistaken about the time. And now that I'm saying that, I'm like, what the heck? Like, that was the argument back then, and now it's not there. I mean, we know.
Right.
Um,
and AZ, just real quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but we haven't said anything that was deleted or taken from any of the information that was taken off of any device in this case was anything to do with something being illegal. We're just discussing the fact at this point that it's coming out that something could have been deleted.
Wait, what are you talking about? Wait, who are we talking
Just
about?
a comment. AZ. I mean, it's nothing major. They weren't disrespectful. They're just saying if law enforcement retrieved deleted data, apparently it wasn't nothing illegal. And that's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, we're not victim, we're not coming down. We're trying to make sense of the document and what we're reading. Right. And I'm not also saying there's no explanation and this isn't gonna be all explained so well. And we're trying to, okay, we've heard about this before. What can we fill in for blanks? And you know, but we're not talking about the document.
I somewhat disagree with you. I don't think it will be explained appropriately at trial. I think it will be skimmed over and it will be moved past, just like I don't think the text messages are going to be explained well. I don't think that at the end of the day, and this is just, I'm going to surmise my feelings real quick about this. At the end of the day, no matter which way this trial ends up, guilty or innocent, I don't think anybody's going to be completely content on the knowledge that we have about this case. I think there are going to be questions that stem from now all the way for the next 40 years about this case. There's still discussion, ladies and gentlemen, about the Chris Watts case on who else could potentially be involved in that case, because that's just the way true crime is. It's a discussion. There's thoughts, there's feelings, there's emotions that go into this, and there's not enough answers that stem from our justice system that can fulfill everybody's craving for knowledge. And even the knowledge that we do get, different people will interpret it differently and have different thoughts and feelings based off of what knowledge they have. So this case is going to be talked about for the next 25 years, Kiki. 25 years, and you're still going to have a divide down the middle of people that feel as though they don't have enough information to truly convict Bryan Kohberber. And then you're going to have the other side of things. They're going to be the people that 100% believe he's guilty, and it's going to continue to be talked about forever.
Whew. I mean, I can't not disagree with you. I mean, I'm trying to think, because as you know, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you guys know this is the first time I've covered a case. And so that I can only compare it to what I've seen from memory. And I mean, thinking about a case that I was convinced of, that later on, listening to the information, the totality, I had questions, but instinctively I thought the guy was completely guilty. And again, I didn't follow this case. I'm just bringing up an example. I'm thinking off the top of my head, maybe Scott Peterson. That was a really interesting case because I was so convinced this man was guilty from the evidence I saw when the trial was presented like 20 years ago or something. And then you hear a relative of the victim come out and then talk about other extreme offenders in the area and some weird timing about the dog walk. And you know, all these things that I thought I knew, you know, I have to pause for a second and say, oh, wait a second, was that circumstantial? Was that, you know, was I just thinking this guy was scummy and I just thought, oh, scummy guy, you know, what, you know, so, and then the other one that we can bring up, that the mystery, for whatever you believe, there was a complete divide, and it wasn't just about police misconduct. It was literally about whether he did it or not in the OJ trial. And you can't say that everybody believes OJ is guilty, because that's not true. It's just not true. And so many people went to their grave believing he was framed in some way. And it wasn't just officer misconduct. And so, I mean, there's two examples right there. And this one is bigger.
I agree. And you know what? I could almost look at the Scott Peterson case, which is a fascinating case. When you really get deep down into that, there's so much embedded in that case that could look at an alternative perp defense in that case as well. It's almost comparable to the Brian Kohberber case that just in the back of my head, I think that Scott Peterson was almost found guilty based upon narrative and what he looked like and was presented to be by the prosecution. They did a great job. They did a great job of really making him look a certain way, and they were able to find him guilty. And I'm going to let you take the lead in this, and then I'll follow your lead into this question, Kiki. What do you think is the most damning thing the prosecution will utilize at trial? And then to go along with that, to kind of back that up, what's the biggest drawback for the defense? What do you think the defense will have to overcome when it comes to the prosecution?
Okay, that's a great question, Tommy, and thank you so much for asking it. I think it's going to come down to the most difficult obstacle is going to be explaining the DNA, because now that we know that there was a viable sample on there on the knife sheath, Ann Taylor, by proclamation, by what she has told us, is she said her client is innocent. So by nature, by the nature of what she just said, she's going with an alternative suspect theory. And if an alternative suspect did it, because she said, Your Honor, our client did not do this, that is her defense, right? So by definition, that knife sheath would have had to have been planted, or there's got to be an explanation why it was there. It was sold, it was given away, it was this, along with the knife sheath, with my DNA. That's going to be the hardest thing, because Ann Taylor's going to have to explain to us how that knife sheath got there. And she has an explanation because she had all this information, everything we're looking at, all of these Snapchats, all this stuff we're looking at, all these things that everyone says are slam dunk against Bryan, the Amazon search, everything else. Ann Taylor and her team knew this when they put their hands on Bryan Kohberber's shoulder and said, Your Honor, our client is innocent. So although I do believe the knife sheath and the DNA evidence is the largest obstacle, I also know that some of the most talented attorneys in the state of Idaho had an explanation in their head as to why that was there. So, and then I just want to really touch when you said something about Scott Peterson. I think with the Scott, and this also plays into Tommy's comment, I think when it came to Scott Peterson, even when I go back and look at it now, one of the things that really kind of still, hangs me up is the alibi. You were out boating on Christmas while your wife was at home doing what? Opening the stocking. Like, that alibi plays a huge role, whether we believe it or not, because it can make your mind trail into motive. It can make your mind trail into where your mindset was. It can just say, well, you probably should be able to tell us where you were. So I think the obstacle is going to be presenting the alibi, because it looks like it's going to have to be done via Cy-Ray, and it looks like they're going to bring hell and high water against Cy-Ray. And so those are the two thoughts that come to my head. And thanks for the question, Tommy.
I think I could try to surmise my thoughts in regards to this question, because it is a very good question, and it's very thought-provoking, and I think you could go many different ways in answering this question, and it makes sense in being able to do that. I personally, if I want to say what's the most damning thing the prosecution will use, well, they've already done it. They used a narrative. They used a way through the mainstream media, and then through the emotional chaos of victims' families, to touch people in and around the area to create guilt before anything has been presented that would literally be the damning evidence against this man. And I get it. People would jump up and down and scream at me and say, but they got the sheath. They have the sheath. I don't care about the sheath, ladies and gentlemen. The sheath means nothing to me. I've put zero value into that sheath as evidence. It's a movable object. with a small amount of touch DNA on it, I think it could be explained away, especially if you can't prove there was any other way Bryan Kohberber was in that house. But moving, what's the biggest drawback for the defense? What are we going to run into when we come to this trial? It's the exact same thing I just said. It's the narrative. It's the emotional chaos. You're going to see the victims' families in that courtroom. And I'm telling you, the prosecution is going to stand before this jury and they are going to showcase to each and everybody willing to listen how different Bryan Christopher Kohberber is, how different he looks at the sky, how different he talks to people, how different he interacts with people. This is going to be the prosecutorial way that they're going to attack this man. And how do I know that? Because I've been there. I've seen it. I've been attacked by prosecution as being something when all they could speak upon in one of my trials was my past actions. They couldn't bring up enough about the case I was facing. They tried me under the premise of what I used to be, and thankfully, I had a defense attorney that was able to overcome that. And it was good that I was able to do that, even though obviously I served my time and I had to do what I had to do. But I'm telling you, the prosecution's most damning, anything and everything about this case has already happened. And it's still happening right here, right now, before we go to trial, because there's people out there willing to push that narrative and continuing to do so. And everybody on that train has forgot about innocent until proven guilty. I'm going to have a t-shirt on because, look, like I've told everybody, I'm going to the hearing on the 9th. I'm going to be in a suit. I'm going to go looking proper, looking professional. But I'm telling you, the minute that I exit out of that, and mark my words, I am exiting out of that courtroom and taking off my dress shirt, and I will have a shirt that boldly states innocent until proven guilty. That's for anybody and everybody, ladies and gentlemen. That's where I stand. That's where I stand. Innocent until proven guilty. And Kiki stepped down for a moment. Hopefully she comes back. And thankfully she did.
I'm sorry.
I thought I ran you up. I was hoping that I wasn't getting too emotional and running you up, and then you're hearing about my t-shirt.
No, but I mean, I just like hearing your passion because I know you've been in this position before. You've been in the position of facing life in prison and facing death row. And I can tell in your voice, like it's a reflection of maybe a little bit of what, you know, we might psychologically be hearing from the defendant in this case. And my subscribers and my viewers are awesome. They brought up some good points. I just wanted to reiterate on, Nothing Half-Assed made a really good point when I was talking about the knife sheath. And I just wanted to bring it up. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, she basically said, yeah, but they're going to have to put Bryan at the scene. So it goes down to the point that, of course, the defense is going to have some explanation for this. And they've thought of it because they knew about that when they put their hands on Bryan Kohberber's shoulder and told him. And I'm frozen again.
I do see that. I can hear you, okay, but I can, and
I cuckoo eye.
I'm going to quickly just respond to this. Duh, dude. The fact is the evidence is overwhelming. We are not the jury. I'm going to just respond to this in a professional, easy manner. Anybody within a community where a crime has been committed could potentially be on a jury. And if you feel at this point in a gagged case, you don't know the evidence of, except for the itty little bit that has come out, that remember, isn't even going to be utilized at trial, because they're not even going to utilize how they use the IgG to get to Bryan Kohberber. They're not going to even speak about the other DNA samples at the crime scene. So the overwhelming evidence, because you're not the jury, it still shows the problem in our society. People are willing to convict on what they determine to be overwhelming evidence without actually even knowing how it ties in to the prosecution's evidence. You don't even know how it's going to be spoken upon. You don't know how it's going to be portrayed. You don't know how it's going to be used. And then you don't know what the experts are going to say. And at the end of the day, you don't know what the defense is going to put up as a defense towards that. So, overwhelming evidence to find this person guilty as of right now, I'm sorry, that just showcases the downfall in the issues that we have. And I'm not one that walks around saying everybody's innocent, because damn right, there are so many people as guilty as you can imagine. Guilty as you can imagine. I don't personally find that as of yet with Bryan Kohberber, and I'm not saying the man's innocent. I'm just saying I can't find him guilty based upon what I know. That's why we have trials. That's why we have this process. But by the way people are acting, especially the way they're acting about this Bryan Kohberber case, we might as well throw that whole process out the window, and we should no longer call ourselves a free country. The freedom would be gone if it's not innocent until proven guilty and deemed guilty by a jury of his own peers. But remember, Betsy Ross, you may not be a juror of this case. But the scary thing is your approach to this case could be utilized in the future of a case you are a juror of. Remember that. That's why we have to remember about freedoms. We have to remember why these things are put into place and why people out here fight for rights, fight for better laws, fight for better training of our law enforcement, fight for all of these things. And then we ask for it all to be done in the open, honest, transparent manner. That's freedom. That's what our country is built upon. That's why we have survived as a free country for as long as we have. And that's why we can walk the streets with a little bit of feeling within us that we're not going to be accused of things we did not do and just get found guilty all over again. And I thought you were frozen there for a minute, but you were just in the stoic pose.
I was making sure can you put Betsy Ross's comment back up, please?
If I can find it. Which one was it? The one I was just ranting on?
Yeah.
All right, let me find it.
I need to turn the filter down. It's like
And I'm sorry that I went on a rant and rave. And it's nothing against Betsy Ross. Like, I want people to understand that.
I want Betsy Ross's name up when I say what I'm about to say.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it again. I mean, I see the other comments, but I'm trying to find it. I don't want people to feel as though I was trying to attack or do anything. I mean, if Betsy Ross, if you are in here to, really enjoy the chat and the discussion, welcome. I haven't seen you in our chat before, but if you are here to troll and you're here, to stir stuff, this isn't the place. It's not going to happen. But, we'll definitely hear you out, and we'll definitely take what you have to say into consideration. And there you go, Kiki. I did find it for you.
All right. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit about history. So who is Betsy Ross? Betsy Ross was a woman who furnished the first version of our American flag. It was in 1777, and the 13 stars on that flag, Betsy Ross has in her profile picture with the photograph of the U.S., represents the 13 original colonies. And the majority of those people were leaving England because they wanted religious freedoms. In fact, they were basically being shoved into the US. And the point is that tyranny was what they were trying to get away from, because the judicial system at that time, the finest in the world, was tyrannical, and it was where they were fleeing from. And they came here because they didn't just feel like they wanted rights granted to them by a leader. They wanted God-given rights, the right to own their own property, the right to not be taxed without representation. But particularly, they wanted to not be, they didn't want a tyrannical government telling them what to do. So we formed a judicial system, but it had one check and balance that could prevent it from falling to all the other experiments they did in democracy. And it's why we're a representative democracy. They created the freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom to peacefully assemble. And when we have all of these freedoms in place, it's a way for us to have a checks and balances against our judicial system. Because when that system goes haywire, the only chance we have is the people. So if we don't have citizen journalists out here covering stuff like Dude over here that you referenced, then we don't have the system of checks and balances. And one of the things Andrea Burkhart and somebody brought up the statesman's being excluded from this trial at Wisconsin. That's a major issue. The Statesman was one of the first papers to bring up constitutional issues in this case, because they were trying to get copies of that 911 call via FOIA. And the reason I know this is because Fry was running for sheriff. And all of these arguments came up by the Statesman. And they're like, look, we're having our own freedom of press issues here. Why aren't we allowed to get some of this information that's completely public knowledge? Andrea Burkhart brings up in the Delphi case how they weren't allowing reporters in certain portions of the courtroom. And it had to do with making sure that everything was on the up and up with the prosecution. So my point is twofold. Number one, the reason we're covering this is because we can, and it's called auditing your freedoms. And from our perspective, we are auditing our freedoms. If people don't audit your freedoms, you don't know if you have them. But two, when it comes to a jury, a lot of people will argue, well, I'm not on the jury. Like, I don't have an obligation. I'm not part of the court. I don't have an obligation to not taint the jury pool. If the point is to pick a cross section of your community, and you taint that cross section, or we don't take some responsibility as citizens to say innocent until proven guilty, then that cross section of the community just does, then it's slighted, it's slanted. So we make an effort. We make an effort to say innocent until proven guilty, because we are that cross section of our peers. And if, God forbid, you're ever on the court, not for any crime, and you need a jury, do you really want people who are just said, well, the paper said it was guilty, I'm going to go guilty? No, you want people to believe in innocence until proven guilty. Don't show me the man and show me the crime. Show me the evidence and I'll show you the crime. I'm wicked. The caffeine is kicking in. But I want to disagree on the premise of the question, not just, the facts. Like, I believe this is our right, and we should not be embarrassed to audit our rights.
No, Kiki, you said it so well, and it's hard to even follow up what you had to say, because you did say it so well. And when people, they come at me and they say, look, you take this a little bit to the edge. You're a little bit emotional about this. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I am. Because I've sat in a jail cell knowing what I had done when I committed the crime, and I took responsibility for my actions to be there. But I've also been in that courtroom where I knew I had not done what I had been perceived to have done, and I did not feel comfortable with the so-called the peers of mine were going to be the jury. What do you mean, my peers? And then when I look at Bryan Kohberber, I wonder, what peers are you talking about at Bryan Kohberber? Because it says, you know, the peers will be your jury and they will determine innocence or guilt. Well, from what I understand, the prosecution's going to put on an entire case of how he doesn't have friends, how he doesn't have peers, how he didn't have any connection mentally, physically, emotionally to society. So he doesn't really have peers. So it's people like me that I do really stand firm in my belief innocent until proven guilty. And I will argue that to my end of time, not because I want everybody to be found innocent. No, it's a very simple concept, and I can explain it in a very simple way. You all want me to be honest and truthful. You want me to be able to look you in the eyes and say the truth. Well, I damn well expect the opposite side to have to do the same. I expect those who are bringing charges against people to have to do the same. I expect the FBI, instead of using backdoor methods that break even their own procedures, to have to step up to the plate and answer to why they did that. Is it a crime? No, but it's dishonest. And if I did something dishonest, people point at me and say, don't ever talk to that dude again. Don't give him any trust. Don't give him anything, because he's showing how dirty he is. He's showing how fraudulent he is. I just want the same from the other side. Why do we, and I'm going to utilize a part of the actual case that's being argued right now between the defense and the prosecution in motions in limine. Why should the defense and Bryan Kohberber accept the fact the prosecution, instead of explaining step by step how they utilized the IGG process to get to Bryan Kohberber from start to finish of when they found that DNA to the very moment they figured out it was Bryan Kohberber's? Why do we avoid that entire conversation and just get to a common called in tip? That's all we're going to say. It's a tip. Wait, what? Okay, that's cool. You know what? Next time I go rob a bank, the whole bit that I'm going to say about it is it was just a tip. They had money. I'm not going to tell you how I figured out the whole process and how I was able to do it and how I was able to get into the accounts. I'm not going to give you that info. I'm just going to tell you I had a tip. That doesn't suffice. That's not truth. That's not honesty. And now it's our country that's doing this to us. Look at Delphi, and this was a question earlier, Swamp, and I want you to answer this one too. Do I feel as though the very trial of Bryan Kohberber is going to be in view for all to watch and see? No, I don't. It's going to be 100% Delphi 2.0. Why do I think that? Because how do you get around how you got to Bryan Kohberber if you don't talk about the IGG process? How the hell did you get to Bryan Kohberber then? Tell me that story. Kiki, I'm going to shoot it off to you.
Oh, thank you. I know. I really, it's really, I appreciate hearing your passion for this. Just a couple, follow-up statements I wanted to make back to Betsy Ross. The first one is, and you as well, I don't know if they still, and I think I'm frozen on the screen right now. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think they use the verbiage cross-section of your peers anymore. I think they use now the cross-section of the community, because for that very reason, why you could have somebody who's an outcast. It's supposed to be a fair cross-section of the community. But Betsy Ross had made another statement that says the state will have to prove every element of the crime brought reasonable doubt. The jury will take their job very seriously. A man's life is at stake. That's they're still a gag order. So my point is this is yes, every time, most of the time when I've heard post-trial interviews with juries, it is amazing how in our justice system, how seriously the jury takes it. And I do agree with that. However, it doesn't mean that we don't make our best effort. It doesn't mean we don't have an obligation to try and perpetuate innocent until proven guilty. There is a reason why our law states that. And, I don't know. I'm glad we're having the conversation because it's important. And I'm going to try and refresh my screen. So if I disappear, you guys know where I am. Oh, I'm back. Okay, never mind. Are you muted?
Yeah, of course. I was rambling away. I want to hit this one too real quick. And yes, I do understand there's a gag order, but I also know what's coming out through the courts, that this judge now is unsealing things and allowing people to see things, which of course, obviously both sides are utilizing in their discussions. But what I'm going to do is I want to get to this. I want to leave the whole gag order thing to the side, that the state's going to have to prove every element of this crime brought reasonable doubt. The jury will take their job very seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. I absolutely agree. I think that juries do take what they're impaneled to do very seriously. I have no question about that. However, if the state has to prove every element of the Bryan Kohberber case, why are they not willing to come to the table and explain from the moment they found the knife sheath to the moment it delivered Bryan Kohberber's name in totality, so that the jury could hear every word of that? Because you just said they had to prove every element. But from what I'm seeing is all they're going to have to prove is they got a tip avoiding every element of that. And a jury's not even going to have all of the info that they possibly need to make a determination on guilt or not guilt. That's what I'm talking about. That's my issue. I don't care about the gag order. I haven't come out here. I'm not one of these creators, and neither is Kiki, that comes out here and manufactures evidence in this case. We don't do it. We come out here, we speak upon the things that are released to us via the courts, and then we also have open-minded discussions based on opinions. We don't connect the two. We keep them separate because it's a good conversation on both sides to be had. So we're both knowledgeable enough to know there's a gag order in this case. And I think Kiki and I both have been in agreement stating we feel as though there's probably going to be more released in regards to evidence that could both be detrimental to the defendant, and there could potentially be evidence that's released that showcases an alternative perp scenario. And guess what, Kiki? You know what's funny? What's been happening lately now that this judge has opened the doors to things being released?
A lot of reasonable doubt. A lot of questions. That the curiosity is through the roof. Like what you're saying is we don't have to, when you talk about how we don't manufacture anything, we don't have to. There's constant feeding of it. There's just so much information. It's but yeah, since the judge has altered the gag order, to seal, redact, seal, deseal, and redact. Well, yeah, I mean, the case to me has been blown wide open. It's a new case, you know, and then even little things like we all kind of assumed we were going to have more explanation to the 8-hour delay in the 911 call. And then lo and behold, just a couple months before trial, it becomes more question than we'd ever had, because now it looks like the scenario that we were kind of being hushed to believe. Like the scenario that we thought before was there was massive confusion, contamination of the crime scene. If you remember correctly, these are the things we talked about: massive contamination of the crime scene, which was the biggest concern. And then was there something weird going on, or nefarious going on in the house prior? I don't think that the newly released 911 kind of text messages necessarily show that, but I'm saying, like, there's more mystery now than there's ever been. I'm not, my words aren't coming out right because it's just me. It's late where I am. It's almost midnight. Sorry. There's no excuse. I should shut up.
No, I
oh, man is banned.
No, that's the wrong person.
Oh, okay. You want me to unban him?
Yeah, if you can, you're a mod,
Sorry,
so you can.
yeah,
no, Calico Man, that was not intentional whatsoever. This is called me not being allowed to touch a mouse. So, Swamp's gonna fix that real quick because that was not intentional whatsoever. Jiminy Christmas, I'm telling you, I'm like pointing on something I want to click on, and then it's God, I feel bad. Catacomb Man, I feel absolutely horrible about that.
Well, it's okay. Catacomb Man will get over it.
Well, I mean, that's just not my nature. But you know, we had so many things we wanted to get into in tonight's show, and I know it's getting a little bit late, Kiki. So we're not going to get into everything that we wanted to get into. But that is and I'm glad to see Catacomb. I'm so sorry. That was so stupid.
I can't unblock him. Hold on. I think it's because it's you. Oh, I got to go to the first one.
No, they're unblocked.
They are? Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I mean,
on my end, it's saying all the messages are still deleted. Hold on.
Right? Catacomb Man. That's Catacomb Man right there, right?
Okay. We're game.
I mean,
we're back in the game.
I'm pretty sure it's on my side. I see delete comment, put user in timeout, ban user, and delete their comment. So obviously, I think something got fixed. Whew. God, just don't allow me around a mouse. I'm telling you.
Jen.
I know, really. Get home from work, please.
Do you want me to segue into our next segment really speaks for itself. I mean, I could play this soundbite for you folks.
Please do. That gives me, can I take a 2-minute away from the screen break and you just run the show?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. All right, folks. So this is the Kiki show for 2 minutes. And what I'm going to show you is a video. I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to play it for you. And it's a soundbite from the January 24th hearing. And this is who we were just talking about, Massoff talking. Now, when I was talking about Massoff's strategy, it's like that kind of traditional attorney strategy we all hear about, where the attorney who knows what the answer is and aligns all of their questions up in a plan. And you can see it very masterfully with Massoff, because on the stand, you hear the investigator eluding the question by mincing words, and it's I think it's a brilliant soundbite. So let me find it. Okay, so this was given to me. Wakanyan Tonka dropped this in my Discord, and it's C-Girl from TikTok, and we do love C-Girl's videos. They're amazing. So I don't believe she has a YouTube channel, but please find her on TikTok. And her handle is C-Girl. So here, let me play this for you.
Show. The expert witness, a detective working in the IDAHO4 case, admitted that they searched Bryan Kohberber's phone without a warrant. They made a digital copy of his phone, apparently from the cloud, and it was stored on a USB drive. Now, I've shown you a lot of search warrants for a USB drive for the Idaho State Lab. So they had his phone data and everything on it before they seized the physical phone at the PA home raid. Listen, this is crazy.
We've called it cell phone / USB. How did the state come into possession of Brian's phone?
Obtained via the warrant in Pennsylvania.
Was a copy of that phone made prior to the search warrant being signed?
Which search
Copy
warrant?
of Brian's cell phone.
Again, I'm asking which search warrant you're talking about, the one from Pennsylvania or the one that we requested once the data returned?
I'm talking about when it was first seized. So it'd be the first,
The Pennsylvania one?
right?
I do not know.
You're aware that a copy of the phone was made and put on a USB,
Yes.
and then a warrant was obtained to search the USB.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the second warrant.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the cell phone searched prior to the warrant for the USB?
The extraction was created before the warrant in Idaho was requested.
Was the extraction searched before the warrant was obtained in Idaho?
No,
And how do you know that?
I was the one that received the extraction.
Michelle, the expert witness, a detective working in the IDAHO4 case, admitted that they searched Bryan Kohberber's phone without a warrant. They made a copy, a digital copy of his phone, apparently from the cloud, and it was stored on a USB drive. Now, I've shown you a lot of search warrants for a USB drive for the Idaho State Lab. So they had his phone data and everything on it before they seized the physical phone at the PA home raid. Listen, this is crazy.
We've called it cell phone / USB. How did the state come into possession of Brian's phone?
Obtained via the warrant in Pennsylvania.
Was a copy of that phone made prior to the search warrant being
Oh, wait.
signed?
I started over. Sorry.
Which,
Copy of Brian's cell phone.
again, I'm asking which search.
So I'll let you go, AR, and then I'll give my points on it.
No, I want you to go.
Couple things. Okay, so my most astute observation, or I think it is, I don't even know if it's a legit observation, but my first observation is I'm not sure how the extraction happened without warrant. Because if the extraction was done from the physical phone, still, why were you in the physical phone with locking devices and security without warrant? And two, if it was done from the cloud, how did you get a copy of the phone without password, username, ID, or permission from the, how did you get an extraction without a warrant? So it's the extraction itself that I have question about. Like, how did you obtain that? And so you obtain things and wait for the warrant? Is that what we're hearing? And then second to that, he does state the extraction was reviewed without warrant. So on all fronts, I'm like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like if they were to go collect this cell phone for evidence right now, tonight, they can go make a copy of it and break into it and hack into it and make a copy of it and then wait for a warrant. Because that's what you have to do. You have to schmack into it, right? Am I not right? Am I right? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, there would be two routes that could possibly go. One would be the correct route, and one would be the incorrect route. One route that they could go is asking Bryan Kohberber's permission to get details out of his phone. The second route, that would be the wrong route, is them not having permission and just getting into the phone with their experts that know how to do that without a warrant. And all of that should be gone. Like you should not be able to utilize that at all whatsoever. And that would put a lot of things into jeopardy. of what they were able to find on that phone. But I mean, I find little things are trickling out that are just seeming odd. Like Koppendorfer is talking about how she was able to get into Bryan Kohberger's Strava app and be able to see that he ran a 6-mile run. Is this an app that just literally has no protection? Anybody can get into these apps? I mean, I don't feel that it would be the same in regards to Bryan Kohberger's phone. Like even if Bryan Kohberger were to have given some sort of permission, law enforcement would have had to try to protect themselves by getting a warrant and going the proper ways, because then you get into a he said, she said. I didn't let him into my phone. What are you talking about? Yes, you did. You gave us the password. No, I didn't. You broke into it. Well, how do you prove? It's he said, she said. So it's very interesting. You do have people that would like to hear it again. If you want to maybe play it and allow everybody to hear it one more time.
Yeah, I'm just listening. I'm not going to repeat Rolo's comment, but that was funny. And yes, let me play that again for you guys. And what was I going to say? It doesn't really matter. Oh, yeah, I have a point, but I'll bring it. Chanka, I agree with you, and I'll bring up that point after we play this again.
And real quick, Swamp, I just want to let you know, my mods on this side did block Betsy Ross because they feel as though being very disruptive. She's now over on your side in your chat. He, she, whatever it is. So just kind of monitor and be careful. Don't let them disrupt your chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but somebody else had made a comment, and I'm just going to address it. Absolutely, we want conversation. We want the devil's advocate in there. We want you guys telling us your thoughts. However, if you're disrespectful to AR, I have to put you in timeout, because AR is coming. We're not going to throw anybody off, or so that's all. And I do appreciate the debate, and bring me the debate. We want it. We want all of your thoughts. The point is for us to try and objectively look on these things. I know my biases. I've stated my biases before, and AR has his too. But we try our best to look at it from both angles. So I just wanted you to know we aren't just trying to quash argument.
No, we want it. We want discussion. Yeah, we want absolute discussion. We don't want arguments. We don't want disrespectful discussion. We just want open-minded discussion. I've been direct with anybody and everybody out there. I will have any conversation in regards to this case, and we don't even have to utilize the words guilty or innocent. We could just discuss the case, and if you feel he's guilty, that's fine. I don't have any issue with people that feel as though Bryan Kohberger is guilty. I have no issue with that. Let's just have a normal conversation. It's not that hard. I don't need to attack your integrity. I don't need to attack you as an individual, your intelligence, your anything. But don't do mine either. You really don't have to come at mine either, because I'm simply not that unintelligent. I mean, I'm not stupid, and I know what a lot of people have to say, but I don't fit that bill. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So if you'd like to make everybody happy and maybe play that again.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Bombshell. The expert witness, a detective working in the IDAHO4 case, admitted that they searched Bryan Kohberger's phone without a warrant. They made a digital copy of his phone, apparently from the cloud, and it was stored on a USB drive. Now, I've shown you a lot of search warrants for a USB drive for the Idaho State Lab. So they had his phone data and everything on it before they seized the physical phone at the PA home raid. Listen, this is crazy.
We've called it cell phone / USB. How did the state come into possession of Bryan's phone?
Obtained via the warrant in Pennsylvania.
Was a copy of that phone made prior to the search warrant being signed?
Which search
Copy
warrant?
of Brian's cell phone.
Again, I'm asking which search warrant. You're talking about the one from Pennsylvania or the one that we requested once the data returned?
I'm talking about when it was first seized. So it'd be the first,
The Pennsylvania one?
right?
I do not know.
You're aware that a copy of the phone was made and put on a USB.
Yes.
And then a warrant was obtained to search the USB.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the second warrant.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the cell phone searched prior to the warrant for the USB?
The extraction was created before the warrant in Idaho was requested.
Was the extraction searched before the warrant was obtained in Idaho?
No,
And how do you know that?
I was the one that received the extraction.
Okay. What is that?
And real quick, Geoff, thanks for actually explaining that, because I do know of the Golfers app, and I agree with you that that makes a lot of sense, because that is actually public to where people could look that up. So there's probably a way to see the Strava data. I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you.
AR, I'm just sending a quick message in the background. I'll be right back, okay?
You are more than welcome. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been another night jam-packed with a lot of discussion and also information shared with us by Kiki. I'm always appreciative of that. And I'm trying to see if there are any other questions that I potentially may have overlooked, because I definitely don't want to overlook them. That does actually make a lot of sense now, Geoff, in regards to the Strava app. I mean, I guess a lot of these apps nowadays that are utilized, especially maybe sporting apps, they are more public and out there for people to view. I find it interesting that Jennifer Poffendorfer is the one that first found that. I would think many people would have dug in and maybe taken a look at that, considering, you know, we heard about the Strava information very early on. Now, in something like that, is there typically any type of protection for someone's personal information? I mean, how do they run protections for somebody that maybe that doesn't want their information out there? Do you have the capability to block that yourself, or how does that work? If anybody knows, I would love to read your comments in regards to something like the Strava app and being able to protect personal information. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that I caused something in regards to my comments in regards to that individual. And if so, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what's going on?
Nothing's going on. I was asking about the Strava app, and maybe you know, if it is a public app, like I guess there are apps that are public, is there any protection for the person like you or I that potentially had a Strava app to where they're not capable of getting that information? Or
Anything I say about the Strava app in general is a guess. I did get some information on it from, I can look it up really quickly. Mikey had sent me some info on it that I can pull up real quick. I don't know though about the publicly displayed publicly displayed runs on Strava, though. I don't know the answer to that.
Somebody saying you can opt in or out of it, which I mean, I guess that makes sense. I just wonder why anybody would opt in unless you're in some sort of group that's potentially tracking each other to almost, you know, like a public little display of who's better at what. But what do I think the judge will do since Jennings stuff came out? I think that's a great question. And, you know, I would like to see, first of all, I want to see how Judge Hippler reacts to Cy Ray himself. Is this going to open an eye and maybe push Hippler into maybe giving him more respect and more time to be heard? Or is this actually going to be a Judge Goal from the Delphi type situation where Hippler takes offense to this, gets somewhat upset, and maybe even shuts Cy Ray and the defense down a little bit more, which is concerning. I sure hope that it's a way to get Cy Ray's voice heard. And I think that a judge, when something like this comes out, needs to take it absolutely serious and look further into it. So.
Oh, well, especially when you hear Cy Ray talking about, it's not just the prosecution, he's talking about the sourcing. You know, there wasn't a Franks hearing granted. And these were the grievances that probably would have came up if they were talking about like a Brady Giglio violation or something like that. And now that that's not happening, it's interesting how these arguments are still so viable to Bryan Kohberger's defense of his innocence. So it's going to be a chain of custody, I believe, on the stand. And I just also think, I don't think we're going to, well, we're not going to see a battle of the experts with Cy Ray because he wrote the material. He is the expert, you know, and yeah.
Well, I mean, then I hope he gets to take the stand and testify, because I could sure see that, boy, if they block his ability to get up there, then, you know, that would be very interesting. And I do get what people are hinting at in regards to Ashley Jennings. Would this be some sort of violation, or could it even be as big as the Brady Giglio? And I probably mispronounced that, but it's getting late, so people can forgive me. But I mean, that if it is deemed that she falsified or lied, then absolutely, I feel like there should be some sort of sanctions. But I'm still hung up that we didn't have a Franks hearing. Like, I'm legitimately hung up that we didn't have a Franks hearing. But I also, at the end of the day, didn't feel as though it was going to happen. But it should have happened. It should have happened.
Well, I think that somebody else, or not somebody else, Trisha from Echoes of Clarity said it very eloquently in a beautiful letter she penned about her grievances with this case, which is, isn't this something that the bar would look into? If you make a statement under oath and then an expert comes back and demonstrates why you do have not only knowledge of the process, but knowledge of the very specific warranting process because you did these same actions at another time. I wonder, is it at that level, or, you know, what is her defense? I mean, now we're looking at what is Ashley Jennings' defense going to be? You know, because it does seem like the kind of thing that's what Trisha's letter is. What I'm getting at is that the bar would take a look at. I don't know though. I'm not a lawyer.
You know what? The bar's not going to be the first one to take a look at it, though. This would have to be really ran through the course of the process, and the bar wouldn't be the first step of that process. But, you know, and I agree. I think it's a major situation. It needs to be looked into. But you also have to ask yourself at the end of the day, is this only Ashley Jennings, or is there more to this? Is Bill Thompson a part of this conversation? Are others a part of this conversation? Because I get Ashley Jennings' involvement, but what about Bill Thompson? I mean, He's been discussed in other issues, including the sticker gate and other things. And I get that he has a good work, long history and all of that, but is there going to be questions about Bill Thompson as well? And should there be? Should there be?
That's a great question. And also Detective Mowry. I mean, we just listened to Massoff talking about Detective Mowry, and Mowry having to really break down the verbiage to find out he did the personal extraction himself without the warrant. So is this the type of thing? You know, I just want to go back to just one quick thing about the 19th when they found Bryan Kohberger. Just two things that really stick out to me, because I brought up why I think the police indicated that, but one of the victims' mothers said they were swirling the name Bryan Kohberger around, specifically on the 13th. And the way that they brought up that date was prefacing it by saying it was a very important, and I think the word they used was, that was a special day. And I think she repeated it. She goes, yeah, that was a special day. It was when I looked the investigators in the eyes on the 13th, and they told me they were swirling his name around. And that brings me back to, this always comes back to me to when we talk about Bryan Kohberger and the warrants and extractions, it always comes back to, okay, what is the deal with this federal grand jury that had nothing to do with the crime? The 71 federal grand jury subpoenas that had Bryan Kohberger's name on it, implicating him in something else that they don't know, that one of these warrants somehow inadvertently got to Bryan Kohberger in discovery process. I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to pause and say that, and I'm sorry to hijack the.
No, I want to continue with that for a second, because I know exactly what you're talking about in regards to the victims' families that stated the 13th and how it was just like a special day. I have a couple of thoughts in regards to that, because this is a case that frustrated many within the victims' families, because they were not getting the information they felt like they deserved. They weren't getting the information in a timely manner. They just, even at one point, it seemed as though we're not being talked to about the case at all. So I question on whether they actually got the name from law enforcement, or if there was some confusion in regards to the Brent Kopaka name being confused by some as the Bryan Kohberger name, because I still within me feel as though Brent Kopaka was a part of the investigation at some point of the IDAHO4, whether he was, deemed as, outside the spectrum, he wasn't involved, or whatever it might be. I mean, maybe they cleared him, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But I have a gut feeling there could be a mix-up there in that conversation between the victim's family and the very newscasters that they were having a conversation with. And it could legitimately be false info, because unfortunately we've seen the release of some info that panned out to be not true. And I kind of wonder if it's actually Brent Kopaka's name that was being swirled around as a possible suspect.
I mean, it could be, but he would have had to be, Brent Kopaka then would have had to have been on the radar before his standoff, because that was the 15th. So it's true that they could be conflating it. They also had another alternative suspect at that time that they were tracking their phone. So that it could have been that. But I do remember the conversation very vividly and the details they gave. I looked him in the eye. He confidently told me the name. I looked the other one in the eye, and he had like a deadpan stare. I'm like paraphrasing. She really described them and how they looked and how he was like, yeah, I don't know.
But later on, it was those same two that slipped up and fell short of that statement when they made the statement that they were so excited about hearing of Bryan Kohberger's arrest just hours before it was actually made. And it was such a blessing and such a surprise to them that the investigation turned up a suspect and an arrest so fast. So there's a double-edged sword to that conversation, which, you know, I don't do a ton of talking about, but I really do put a lot of these things in the back of my head, and I don't forget about them, because these things, it's just so hard for a victim's family, because you're battling the emotional chaos of losing a family member and the pain within that. You're combating the overall just digging in by mainstream media wanting to do constant interviews with you for their benefit. And sometimes maybe you just misspeak, or sometimes you share feelings and make it sound like it's actually truth. So I don't want to point an accusatory finger at anybody, but I think at the end of the day, you know, could it have been a mistaken conversational point made? Maybe. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, even being said that Bryan Kohberber connected to the Wi-Fi. I mean, come on. Some of the comments that come out just aren't always good.
You know, you're right. The other alternative is that these people who are not investigators, under the most stressful moment of their entire lives, are giving an interview and they could have misspoke. And that's true. And I think it goes back to, all we can do is go back and review those sound bites and make our own decisions, you know,
Right.
Inform ourselves the best we can, because we also are just going off of a human and their impressions. We're not going off of a court document. We're not going off of certified authenticated evidence from a forensic lab, you know.
And I'm going to give you, it's a statement that is, it's an opinion of mine based off of what I've been told that could potentially be factual or not factual by some of these people that are involved in this. And it's directly from their mouths that I base my opinion from, because it was their own words. I do not believe their conversations and back and forth information getting had anything to do with the Moscow Police Department. It had nothing to do with the lead detective, Brett Payne. It had nothing to do with Bill Thompson. That's not where they were getting their info. Their info was coming from the FBI. Their info was coming from a connection they had to the FBI. I mean, they've clearly said it to me. They clearly stated to me that the reason why Bryan Kohberber was so cooked early on is the FBI gave him the full rundown of the DNA on the knife sheath and how no jury would ever not find him guilty with that very evidence. I remember this conversation I had directly with them. Their info was not coming directly from those involved in the case, but it was coming from a law enforcement agent that worked within the FBI that was counseling them on how these things were working and giving them hope that they had the right person and they were going to, for all, no questions asked, they were getting a conviction. And I believe they ran with that, and they felt very comfortable with that information. So
I would love a chance to address AZ's statement right there too. Why did Cy challenge or even mention the AT&T 7-day retention period? It is the crux of the state's claim of no timing advanced records. And the part that I'd like to bring is LexisNexis. I think they were the ones who made this statement. They retained those records for 90 days. And I think that's why he brought it up, is because that's what the prosecution said, right? And Cy is saying, no, they retained those records 90 days. And I could be mistaken, but that was my impression of the answer to that question. If I got it wrong, I'd love for the chat to straighten me out.
I believe that Cy Ray is going to hang back on anything in that discussion right there, because Cy Ray, he knows what the prosecution's stating about the 7 days. Like he doesn't just make these statements and not know what the prosecution is saying. I believe Cy Ray will explain all of that directly in the courtroom, right in front of the judge, and he'll explain why he didn't mention that in his declarations to the court. And I think it'll be a very fascinating conversation. And you know what? I will be the first one that will come out if it's not explained well, that would come out and say I'm confused by why that wasn't explained better. But I have a gut feeling it's going to be well explained. Cy Ray's very good at that. Cy Ray is very good at that. Real quick, I'm just kind of going through a couple of these questions, Kiki. I'm sorry. I know you have another talking point that you want to get to. In regards to a Frank's closed hearing on the 23rd and 24th, that was not actually a Frank's hearing. That was a Frank's motion hearing in regards to whether or not the judge was going to grant a Frank's hearing. I know where you get this info. I know what creator based this. It was not actually a Frank's hearing. It was still the motion. They did the IGG portion of that in a closed courtroom, and then later they opened the courtroom to follow up and move forward with the rest of that motion, which Judge Hippler denied. There was no Frank's hearing on any of the evidence at all. So the IGG did not have a Frank's hearing, and none of the other evidence either. It just never happened. Sorry. I cut you off, Kiki.
No, you didn't. I was just looking I was looking back because I was mistaken, and I saw two comments, and I'm kind of merging them together by Heather, but it looks like, so if the argument is irrelevant because the GLDC didn't actually handle those records back in 2022. That's what Heather said in the chat. So the 7-day retention period wouldn't matter about something that happened in 2022. So why did that came into the conversation, I think I thought that that's what the prosecution said for one of their arguments, but I'll have to read the context of that again. I don't know why it's in the affidavit.
And this is something I spoke
thank you, RV,
with somebody as well. In regards to the GLDC, they are a different entity than AT&T themselves. GLDC is who took over the records in 2023. What Cy Ray is making the statement was the inner workings of how AT&T was doing it prior to that. And I think he's going to make it very clear that those records could have been obtained for Bryan Kohberber. And that I tend to agree. I think the 7-day situation is not going to be as relevant as what a lot of people are making it out to be. Otherwise, Cy Ray would not be speaking upon it. Like, Cy Ray is not dumb. He's just not dumb. All right. So, and RB keeping it rolling. I see did gift 5 Swamp Rose membership. So I want to say a big thank you for that as well. And I'm sure Kiki does. Maybe you already did that and I just missed it.
In the chat.
Did you have another topic that you want to talk about tonight, or shall we wrap it up for tonight and maybe re-engage with more talking points tomorrow? Because we still, ladies and gentlemen, have the concept. Kiki brought it to my attention that she has the capability of doing call-ins. So we want to give that a shot as well, where we can allow people to give us a call, rant and rave with us, and have a great discussion. But
yeah, I mean, and I think it's kind of cool too, because I had opened the phone number because I wanted to talk to somebody, and I wasn't gonna. I mean, guys, like I said, I'm not really a sleuth. I don't have like a burner phone, so I opened a Google phone number so I could talk to somebody the other day, and I'm like, why don't I just use this in my show? It's wonderful. And the cool thing about it is that you, the person I was calling, actually can leave me voicemails and text messages just like a regular phone. So if you guys have like ideas for stories or something you want to tell us, it's a great way to leave us a tip too. You could call or text us. We could even leave the phone number now. But as far as my other topics for tonight, I don't know if we're covering them. I'll just tell you as like a teaser for our next show.
I mean, if you want to get into one, we can do one more maybe, and then, you know, we can go from there. But did you want me to show the phone number? I can run that.
Yeah, why don't you run the phone number so you guys have it? This is my new phone number. It's Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wait, I thought I had your real number. Now I'm realizing I've been played. I've been played. I'm kidding. Darn it.
You got the real number here.
I know I got the real number. I know.
So please, you know, like if you guys want to leave a voicemail, leave a text, you want to leave a tip, this is another way for you to reach out to us, just to make it easier on you. You can just shoot a text over and we'd love it. And as far as topics, I'll let you decide, AR. Well, I have 3 of them I really wanted to get into tonight. One thing I really wanted to discuss is the efficacy of the death penalty. And there's a lot of facets to it. I mean, of course, it's bringing it back into the conversation when we see BRYAN Kohberber's developmental disabilities in the latest court documents, because as AR says, this is very likely something to do with mitigating circumstances. But for me, I'm like, God, alternative suspect. Are they trying to say that BRYAN Kohberber was some sort of easy target? We don't know what the motive is, but it does bring into the the questions about DP. If we're getting into this, fine. If we're not, I just want you to know it's not just me bringing up these questions and bringing up the concerns from the community. AR, for those who don't know, literally served time on the same isolation unit where BRYAN Kohberber was first brought in as a potential death row inmate in Latah County. So that's the Latah County Penitentiary. So AR knows where BRYAN Kohberber has been. He has served time on death row, and he's here to talk with his experience about that. So that's the first topic I want to get to. Second, DoorDash driver. We know some initials now, and I think we can narrow it down to some people. And again, Beautifully Broken Woman, who has contributed already in the show, made an incredible post about this, really breaking down the different players that it could be. It's a difficult one to talk about because we don't want to give people's full names on this show. That's just not what we do here. But that's another thing we'd really like to get into. And the last topic, and again, this might be a teaser for the next show even. One thing that's been brought up in my Discord today, and I think it was Meg P who started posting this, is there's like, you can very clearly see the filter that mainstream media is using to alter BRYAN Kohberber's appearance. So we looked at side-by-side photos of how you can see like his skin has like pink in it and like texture. And then he's got this thick yellow filter over his skin. The second mainstream media wants to pop that on their thumbnail or whatever, their headline. And it's just a question, we always are talking about innocent until proven guilty and not making inflammatory statements against BRYAN Kohberber, but a picture speaks 1,000 words. And when you make a picture creepy, the power of that photo is huge. Like even like politicians saying one word wrong can ruin their entire political career. A photo can do that for somebody too. And so it's an interesting subject of how mainstream media is manipulating the image of BRYAN Kohberber. So including the new selfie that was just released. So in his perp walk and everything. So I know you can go where you want with that.
No, I mean, it's a lot of great content. I want to make sure people fully understand. I personally was not on death row. I was housed where the death row individuals were housed. Where BRYAN Kohberber is in Ada County, and also where he was being held in Latah County, is where they would house people facing the death penalty. And I've been in both of those units in Idaho, which is within the jail system, not the actual penitentiary. I was on the same unit in the penitentiary where death row was housed in Idaho, but the majority of my time near death row was actually at the Inmate unit in Arizona, which is Florence, Arizona. Inmate unit. They house the majority of the death row individuals on that unit. One of my and my wife has warned me to be very careful in saying this, but because of the ramifications of people trying to put two and two together, like I'm, running with this guy still. But one of my good friends of life is on death row in Arizona. And I was on the same unit that he's being housed, just doors down through a slider. So I got to talk with the death row inmates. I got to know them. I got to watch them, go to their little 10-foot by 10-foot little walking areas or yard or whatever they want to call it. But thankfully, I personally was never a death row inmate, because it's horrific, the things that those individuals go through and the things you hear and what they endure. So, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. I do understand that some believe in the death penalty, some do not. I just have a little more of an emotional tie to it because I've been so close to it, and I know people on it. And it can be a little gut wrenching at times. It can be gut wrenching.
I don't know. I guess I can only start with like how I feel, and I've said it that many times, and my feelings haven't changed since I've covered this case, which is I just don't know if I were asked to be on a jury if I could hold a man's hands in my, hold a man's life in my hands. And I don't know if like I could convict somebody knowing that they would be killed. And I think I don't think I would be completely honest about that. But where do you find jurors that can do that? And does this bring up that argument that I've heard of professional jurors? And also, when I talk about death penalty, and I do have an entire statement someone wrote me, if we're going to get into the subject, I can read. But when it comes to the death penalty, I have all sorts of issues, like on a larger scale, like on a human rights scale. When it comes to the weight of the U.S. and the demands that we put on other countries, we have treaties where countries tried to stop us from conducting our death penalty and as a form of a cruel and unusual punishment. And I don't know, like on the world stage, how do we go in, how do we stand up like in the United Nations when there are world leaders who still have people enslaved in their countries? And yet we're sitting, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do we get the footing on the world stage when we do this? It's a legitimate question I have. How do you argue human rights when you have a system that possibly, could put an innocent man to death? However, I will caveat that with saying I am acutely aware there is no other legal system in the world we can use for example. You can't give me one. This is the example. This is the best system we have. And it's the best system we have for people like AR and people like you in the chat and all of us who are trying to be citizen journalists. We're trying to audit and exercise our freedom of speech, our freedom of press. And also it goes hand in hand with the right to peacefully protest, because that's kind of, in a way, what we're doing here sometimes when we see the state making an allegation and us having curiosity and arguments on the other half. So I feel like I'm talking slow. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Before I kind of get into that with you, I want to give a shout out to Rollo. Rollo has worked very hard through a history as well, and now he's out here with us. And I know Corcoran very well, Rollo, the shoe, and that system and that whole complex is unreal, and the people that they house there. My neighbor at Corcoran was Jamie Osuna. I don't know if people know Jamie Osuna, the Joker face devil that literally I mean, he was a murderer himself, and he was a devastating individual, and literally 5'5", probably in size, 100 pounds, but he made a mockery of people's lives. So I want to give a lot of love to Rollo, because I know that you've lived it yourself. You've been around those that are living it still to this day, and you're overcoming, brother. You're out here with us, and I may not be able to shake your hands right here in person and do all that, but I could send you a lot of love and a lot of respect for the things that you've been through. So
Yeah, Rollo, absolutely. Rollo's been my mod for a long time, and Rollo, I really appreciate your insight. And just to give you a compliment, today in our Discord, people were talking about some visuals on Linda Lane, something new I hadn't seen before. And I shared with them your video of 1227 on Linda Lane, and everybody was really interested in it. I got like 3 or 4 new comments on it today, talking about how well you did on that video. That was one of your first really complicated edited videos. And I just want to say we really appreciate your work on this case as well. So thank you for being my mom.
The people ask me, my feelings on the mightiest of penalties, which is the death penalty. And, I sway a couple of different ways in regards to it, because of the fact, I've seen these individuals in person. Like, I've gotten to know some of them. So you get a little bit emotionally tied, you get a little bit connected, especially when it's 24/7 that you live in the same area. So you're kind of all thrown together, and you just build a bond, because you don't really have much of an option other than duking it out and trying to get moved, which on the complex I was on with these individuals, it wouldn't matter if you duke it out, wouldn't matter if you took each other's lives, they're not going to move you. So you might as well try to make yourself at home. But what's so frustrating about it is we go through all of this to sentence somebody to the death penalty, and I think it's extremely important that we do have the appeal process. Like, I think that's a protective measure that, like you brought up, we're not putting somebody, I always use the term putting somebody to sleep if there's a possibility they're innocent. But what we're also doing is we're having people sit in the penitentiary for 35 years that have been sentenced to no longer be able to live their life. Like, their life has already been taken from them. They've been given the death penalty. And now 30 years later, you're still going through the court process to figure out whether they're going to take your life or not. I think the humanity behind it is now just kind of being stripped. And the thing, I do see Kim Young about Sean Atwood being a really cool dude, and he is a really cool dude. I've talked with one of your mods and your researcher, Mikey S., who reached out to me, and I was in prison with Sean Atwood. I know his story. I know what he's about, and he is a good dude, and he has great stories. And I do recommend people listen to his work, because he shares a lot, and he has, he definitely has some amazing stories. But when it comes to, I think certain types of crimes, if it involves children, if it involves certain natures of crimes, I think, I don't know. It's so hard for me. Like, I'm sure you could tell I'm struggling with it, because I know some crimes it's warranted. But even some of those people where the crimes would probably warrant it, I've gotten to know some of those people. And look, like I was telling you, Kiki, in one of our conversations, I literally had one of these individuals that's sitting on death row in Arizona protect me. Like, they stood up for me. So how am I really supposed to feel towards that? Even though he's at peace, he knows he deserves it. He's at peace with it. That doesn't always mean that I myself could take and separate the emotional feelings I have, because I know he's actually a good person and could really help others if he would just get his mind right to do that. And I think that's where the hangup is can we get those people that if they could just get their mind right, could we get them to actually get their mind right? That's what's so hard. That's what's so hard.
Wow, you bring up so many things to touch base on. I mean, so for me with this death penalty argument, I just don't feel like I'm the best person to give it, because I also know a couple things about myself. When I was young, I knew I would never be able, unless I was forced in some circumstance to fight on the front line. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could be a combat soldier. I don't think I have what it takes inside of me to pull that trigger. Okay. Another thing I've always thought to myself is I'd never be able to hunt. I'm not a hunter. I would never be able to pull that trigger, even though I do, I eat meat sometimes. I eat fish. And so, but I'm not able to do that unaliving of the animal. Maybe I'm not the right person to have this argument. I'm not strong enough. I'm not man enough. I'm not, I don't know what to say, as I was really misogynistic, but you know what I'm trying to make some sort of analogy so that I can reflect my thoughts. Like, I might not be the right person, just like I'm not the right person to be the leader of the free world. I don't know. I'm not really making much sense, but I do agree with you. And then back to your question of rehabilitation with these extreme offenders, I don't know if rehabilitation is even the right word, but you were saying, can we do something to get people right in their head who have this issue? And, and I don't know the answer to that question, but I want to go back to what I was saying in our last live stream about who I think is the queen of true crime, which is Bailey Sarian. And I've been listening to her for years and years. And a couple of years ago, she said something that just resonated with me. And she goes, you know what? I started out in this true crime on YouTube, and I was thinking to myself, okay, these are these weird serial killer people that were born. There was something wrong with them. They were born with something wrong. And she goes, after covering this for so many years, I don't believe these killers are born anymore. I believe we're making them. And she knows there's exceptions to that, that there are psychopaths born. But in general, all of her observations from her thousands of videos, and, she's not a scientist. She's not an expert. She's a regular person just like me and you. And she believes these killers are being made by our society, the childhoods and the upbringing of a lot of these people. And like I said, I know there's exceptions to it. Ted Bundy,
I agree with you. And I do have a comment up here that I'm going to get to next, but I want to kind of go with what you're saying, because and this is a part of also my debate when it comes to a death penalty conversation. There's a big difference between somebody that's sick and violent prior to going to the penitentiary. Then there's also the individual that's gone to the penitentiary for something like burglary, theft, fraud, that became violent based off of their surroundings. The penitentiary can teach you a lot. It can turn you into somebody you never were. And I want to link that thought with this statement by Patrick. Does the criminal mindset and thought process ever go away, or do you just refrain from illegal behavior? That's the difference between them and us. And this is absolute truth right here, Kiki. The way that this is said is perfect, because you have people that commit crimes, go to serve their time, and they learn a lesson and they begin to appreciate things outside of that criminal mindset, things outside of that prison, like wives, like their children, that maybe they didn't appreciate enough before they went to prison, but they learned how important those things were. And that's what helped me become on the path of trying to change and become better, was the fact I found my reasoning for moving forward in life. There are criminals that can never get away from the thought process or the want to commit crime. And they'll slip back into that mindset and those actions. They'll begin to lie again. They'll begin to steal again. They'll begin to do these things. And that's because they've never had any appreciation or the wants in life to do anything different. And those are those types of people that when you get into the conversation of the death penalty, the very people that are willing to go be violent and take lives and hurt children's, that are never willing to begin to appreciate other things outside of that criminal activity, those are the ones that probably can't be changed. They can't find better. They can't strive to be better. And look, I make mistakes every single day. And I fight the urge every single day to ensure I don't do something stupid. And it's not the urge like I'm going to go steal or I'm going to go do this or that, because I don't have those wants to do that anymore. But they're still allowing a mistake to lead you into making another mistake, and then a bigger mistake that could lead you back into the really dumb mistake. So I appreciate this comment because I absolutely agree with it, and I understand it very well. And one thing too, Kiki, like, I'm not just kissing Patrick's butt, because this gentleman and I, we've had conversations back and forth that have actually not been great conversations. Like, we've been angry with each other. He's been angry with me. I've said things back. It's been a debatable conversation, but he has very valid points. I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, Patrick, I love your comment, and you always give us food for thought. And this question is no exception. So, I mean, I'm speaking from observation, and I've heard a lot of people coming out of jail, and the process just to get a job is dehumanizing. I believe a lot of people on parole, they're required to apply for a job and then give all their baggage to their employer. And if their employer accepts that, there is a very intense process for the employer to report back to the parole officer. And there's a temptation there, from what I understand, where, also you go back to working and living an honest life, and all of these things thrown in your face after you've done your time, which is an issue with the parole system in general, I believe. After you've done your time, you're still being punished for it. And so you're not able to actually have a job that can provide for you. Like Rolo said, I froze the comments on 1236. Rolo says this, and I think this is it summarizes it really well. If circumstances are called upon, then the survival instinct is always there. And people coming into the criminal lifestyle, some of them are coming from a survival situation, the lowest socioeconomic. I mean, let's face it, just going to jail has something to do with socioeconomics. We know a good lawyer can prevent you from going to jail. That's just a fact. So we know socioeconomics plays a role. So survival is literally the reason for some people becoming criminals in the first place. It's like giving me chills. It's such an awful cycle to watch people getting into. And I like what AR had to share with his audience, which is AR changed. AR was not getting out of prison, and he changed his life, and he got out, and he changed his whole life because of one thing, a good woman. And it's just something for all of us to remember, you know, finding your special someone can, you know, look what it did for AR, and look what family, marriage, and, you know, doing the right thing. One decision can make a change in your life. And when you see how family can affect people in incarceration, what can we do to make families safer, more active, more engaged? Like, what can we do to get the outside world's eyes on the prison system as well? Because a lot of family members go in and they see this hellhole that it is cruel and unusual punishment in itself, some of the circumstances people are locked up in. And also, back to Patrick's statement, I'm sorry, I'm like, can't stop talking. Back to Patrick's statement, when it, with, I'm trying, I like losing my train of thought. So Patrick was saying, I wrote it down. Oh shoot, I can't remember what my statement was. Go, I'll find Patrick's again. I'm sorry. Total.
That's okay. Damn it. This. So lots of prisons are private and don't really care. It's a business. They need you to come back. And this is absolute truth. The prison system now is no longer so much ran by the state. There's still state penitentiaries, but now what they've done is they built a ton of private penitentiaries that now the state is paying to house their inmates, and it's all business. It's all business. These are also the type of yards where you see most of the people escaping from, breaking out from, because they don't hire enough personnel. They don't anything. And the scary thing about this is a lot of these private penitentiaries are housing your most violent of criminals. And to kind of back, you know, what Roland has to say, you know, if I'm put into a place where my family's at risk, or, you know, they're putting me in a position where I have to make a decision, am I going to stay on the perfect course of, you know, my well-behaved self, or am I going to allow myself to go handle my business to protect my family? You're damn right. I'm going to go protect my family, and then I'll have to deal with the recourses after that. But where change can transpire, where a mindset and a drive can change, is going from that individual that didn't care across the board. Like, I didn't respect things. I didn't care about things. It was easy to steal because it wasn't something that bothered me to do, because I didn't care if you lost your favorite purse. I didn't think in my mind how hard you had to work to get said purse. It didn't matter to me whether that ring that you left on your dresser was actually your grandmother's mother's ring that was a family heirloom. We can still make changes within our mindsets and the way that we conduct ourselves that don't take away from the inner structure we are as protective husbands, brothers, sisters, things of that nature, where we stand for our family, we protect rights, and we do that type of stuff. But I can nullify the very stupid things by just knowing, when I look at my wife, the best feeling that I've had in my entire life, the best feeling I've ever had in my entire life, was when I completed my parole for the very first time ever on a state level. I completed my parole, and my wife told me she was proud of me. I had never been more proud in my life. And you would think, really, the most pride you've ever had in life was you completed your parole? No, it's because it came from my wife. My wife was proud of me because that's what made me care to change. And I proved that her want for me to change, her drive to help me get there, everything she dedicated to that, it proved to me was so worth it for her. For her, it was worth it. How do you not take pride in that? That's like, my wife is proud. This beautiful young lady I don't deserve is proud. Damn, that's a pretty darn good feeling. You know, I mean, that's one that will keep you moving forward in life. And guys, look, I've been out of the penitentiary for some time now. It's been years. I can honestly say for the first time in my life, I'm never going back. I am not going back. And there's a reason why. It's because I don't want to go back. For the first time in life, I can say I'm not going back because I don't want to. I'm not weak. I'm just a better decision maker. And I just hope at some point I could share that with somebody else that, you know, they can change too. And you're right, Rolo, California penitentiaries have the highest death rate. I mean, Arizona's right there with them. We run on the same politics. Arizona and California is the exact same politics. The shot callers for the Arizona penitentiaries all come from Arizona. So I know the line very well. The shot callers for Arizona don't come from Arizona. They come from California. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. But it just, you know, that's the finding of want of change is what's most important, in my opinion. The finding of that want. And once you find that, it's easy. You overlook how hard it is to go get a job. Like for me, getting a job, I didn't see it as hard. I even went to, when I got out of the penitentiary, Kiki, it's a funny story. I went right to Nordstrom's retail store where rich people shop. Some of the most judgmental people are in that store. And I went right there and applied, got hired. And I didn't even have nice dress clothes at the time. My wife says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to go get a job." She goes, "Don't you think it would be better for you to start on a little bit lower level? Like, I don't mean to be rude, but there's other positions that won't judge you so much." I said, "No, I think Nordstrom will work for me. I hear they pay really good commissions on sales." "Yeah, but are you sure you're covered in tech?" "I don't care what I'm covered in. I want to be successful. I got to go to a company where I could be successful. I can't go work over there because I'm afraid to work over here." And I got hired. And I worked that job. And I was successful at that job. And it led me to another clothing company that hired me as a key holding manager. A key holding manager for a felon out of the penitentiary. It's because I wanted it. And want takes away fear. Here I am preaching. Sorry.
Well, okay. So, you know, I'd like to just say AR is preaching passionately about this because of his experience in life, but also because AR is also an advocate for people in the incarceration system. And he helps a lot of youth who are entering into the system to stop the cycle, because that's really what AR has devoted, and he can explain it better, devoted a lot of his life to, is finding that, you know, stopping that intervention, stopping that cycle. And also for families who have people who are in incarceration, what can they do to outreach to those people? Because there are programs in place, and if you don't know about them, you know, people can go without simple things like, I mean, I hate to say it, but soap, toilet paper, a cup to drink water. I mean, things that aren't even luxuries to us, things that are just unthought of things that we have in life. And it's not just that, it's a phone call. You know, AR has told me stories about people who turn their life around because their family was able to actually call them in prison. Just call them. That's it. Do you know that if it wasn't for people like AR, who was willing to pick up the phone when a mom is like, I'm going to cry, but like, I haven't talked to my son in 3 months. He's in this massive, scary, death at his door place every day. And I haven't been able to talk to my son in 3 months. And AR can get them on the phone in like 10 minutes because he has who does that? I mean, you tell me, where is an inmate's family supposed to turn? The police? I think about it.
Well, and that's, my wife and I strive because she also had to go through it, being on the streets and have to endure why is my husband not being able to call me for months? What's going on? Is he hurt? Is the yard locked down? Is this? So I think one of the things that I can help so much with is to be there as an informational guide for those that are trying to figure out the system and how it works and why it works the way it does. But also, I could relate back to when I was young, when I was a juvenile, and I was in and out of the jail system because I couldn't get my stuff together. I felt alone. I felt, I was adopted. There were so many excuses that I put into why I couldn't shape up and stay out of trouble. And now today I can look back and say, well, in all honesty, I see there's a lot of excuses here, not, truths behind a lot of this. Even though some of it's true, it's still excuses. But that's one of the things I've dedicated myself to is if we can stop some of these 14, 15, 16-year-old kids from being in and out of our system, being raised by other criminals to where they have to go through a situation like I did, being 16, 17 years old, and knowing you're not going home at the age of 18, you're just going to the next level of yard. You're going to the adult system. So never are you going to see the streets for your 18th birthday. You're going to go over and see the adult penitentiary. I just think that some of the ways I can help is to give these families and even these kids the idea that they're not the only one that's been there and done this. They're not the only one that's enduring it even today, that there are ways to combat it and overcome it. And I always just relate back, Kiki. I relate back to, the key term want. And I think that's your mod. Wakinyan Tanka, my wife and I are actually going to do a discussion about that. We haven't released a lot of information. We haven't discussed it out in front of everybody. We're not looking for any type of like promotion. We're not looking for any type of thanks or high fives for it, but we will be discussing that very soon. So
well, thank you for taking the time to talk about that with us. I know it's it's not easy, and I just want to say also I like hearing a little bit about your personal life. I can tell you right now, from what I understand, to work retail at Nordstrom's, that's not an easy job to get. Number one. Number two, working retail at Nordstrom's is like being a professional retail person. You could walk into any boutique in any of the expensive cities in this country and get a job if you worked retail at Nordstrom's. So I'm very impressed. I just want
and I should line that with my wife also was in management with Nordstrom for over 15 years. So it's like, it made it even a little more difficult because people would say, oh, you had the in to get in with the company. No, I did not. No, I didn't, because Jen wasn't ready to put her name on the line in her career for me getting out of the penitentiary where I could immediately lose my job, do something stupid, and it would all come down on her. So I had to literally take it under my own wing, do my own interviewing, doing everything, letting them get to know me. I had to be honest about my background. They knew I was straight out of the penitentiary because my parole officer had to come see me on the sales floor of the men's department. I had to see my own parole officer on the sales floor of Nordstrom in the men's department. So it was a learning experience, but it was a good one. It opened a lot of doors. It definitely opened a lot of doors. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it.
sounds like you've shopped at Nordstrom before.
Maybe I'm guilty. Well, I'll just say, yeah, I have. We don't have Nordstroms around here in Cape Cod. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, like Rolo said, they have Gucci and shit. They also have the thing about Nordstroms is I wear a specific type of makeup, and you can only get it in certain places. Nordstrom being one of them. But I don't know why. I don't want to talk about Nordstrom. I know we'll lose viewers if I continue with what I was. Do you want to go on to another topic, AR, or are we wrapping up for the night? We just hit the 3-hour mark.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
Are you ready to wrap it up? Like I don't want to cut you short, but
no, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I have to wake up at 5:30, so I probably should.
Yeah, and your husband might be upset if you spend all night with me. I have a lot of love for your husband. He's really, truly a good guy, really a good man. So
thank you. I appreciate that. He's a good man.
Well, it was
and while I'm saying that, I'm sorry. I have to say, I love AR's wife, Jen. If you guys don't know who Jen is, she has her own YouTube channel. It's Pity's Go Stripping. Let's not get the name wrong this night. And Jen hopefully will be recruiting me with Rocco and Philly, my 2 dogs. And we're hoping to do some doggy live streams. Just kind of like, I know a lot of you are pet owners, and it's fun. Like, I was thinking of asking Jen some questions. She has so many dogs, like questions and tips on different dog care. Her dogs are in great shape. They're always so clean and well kept. So I think it'll be really fun. And also, I want to remind you, and also thank Jen for letting me take her husband for 3 hours for this live stream. But don't forget to follow Jen, because she's going to be going to this hearing on the 9th coming up for Bryan Kohberber. She's giving us this perspective because she was there. Like AR was just saying, she watched her own husband get sentenced to like 136 years in jail. Like, she has been in a place that not many people have been, and her perspective is going to be so invaluable. And hopefully we can get her up here live streaming with us, and hopefully even more so, we're going to get her own channel, because after she gives her insight, I guarantee you guys are going to want to follow her, and you're going to want to hear what she has to say. So yeah, Jen, if you're watching, I hope you're off work and you're relaxing, and thank you for letting me have AR for 3 hours, and I'm going to do everything to get those channels going.
She's got 30 more minutes of work, 30 more minutes of work, but that's a good thing for you to bring up. I actually had the discussion with her. She is going to be reaching out to you to do the doggy lives, but like you and I spoke about, Kiki and I spoke with her, and it's a great idea. I do have the second channel that I created that I was going to utilize in regards to my prison talk and stuff of that nature. And we think it's a good idea that we actually change that channel and give that to Jen as her own platform to discuss things, including the IDAHO4 case while we're up at the courts and things of that nature, where she has her own freedom and her own channel to be able to share all that, but she can also join us on panels and do different things. But it would be her own take, her own touch on a channel that kind of gives more perspective into things outside of mine. So
yeah, well, I would just I think it's a good note to end on, just reminding our audience that we have that coming up in 5 days. AR is leaving Monday. He's got that. We actually talked about the different interviews he's doing, and you guys are going to see things the day before, the day of the trial. after the trial. Air has shots planned out. He has interviews planned out. He's even has a game plan to get people to talk to him on the streets. I'm not going to, well, you can tell them what you're going to do if you want, but he definitely has a game plan, and he's going to get people talking.
Yeah, we are. We're gonna get a feel of the land. We're gonna get how Boise feels in regards to this trial and this case. So we're gonna do it in a very just respectful, low-key way. We're gonna utilize the dogs, and we're gonna have some fun. And we just want to get an outright feel for everybody and bring that to you guys of how Boise's acting in regards to this case and the trial coming up, how the community feels, and then obviously we're going to get the feel of the courthouse and everything around it, and the feel of the jail. We're going to bring jail feel to everybody right there at the Ada County Jail where Bryan Kohberber is housed. There's a lot that I just, I'm excited to try to do. I'm nervous, but I'm excited, and I think it couldn't have a better community to be able to do that with.
Well, thank you.
They discourage flashing. Well, damn it. They would definitely discourage me flashing, let me tell you.
Can you just wear your suit, please? That's all.
Yeah, they would definitely discourage mine. But I definitely want to say my thank yous. Everybody have a great night. And Kiki, won't you send us on out?
All right. I will sign off by saying, first off, thank you to the live chat. You guys know how incredible the conversation was tonight. You know, we fed off of you guys because the energy was so good. Thank you so much for the questions. And for our mods, there was a lot of work today in this live stream. You guys had a lot of comments to read, and you protected us really well. And you kept the chat going when, you guys always keep the chat insightful and going, even at all times. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you for your time. This was a 3-hour live stream. The fact that we had mods here the whole time, we are so grateful for. So thank you. And then I just want to turn to our subscribers. We really appreciate your support subscribing to our channels. That support keeps us going. So just want to say thank you for being subscribers, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because like tonight, we wanted to hold off a little longer because we were watching an excellent live stream over at Thou Shalt Not Kill. So hit that notification bell, because you never know when we're going to go live, and we'd hate for you to miss one of these live streams. We could interact with you. But finally, and most importantly, we would just like to take a moment to just thank the viewer, all the people watching, even if you never made a comment, everyone even just lurking and watching in the background. We just want you to know that we realize that a channel isn't Swamp Rose. A channel isn't a comic slot. It's not the person. A channel is a group of people that gather in one place. And so we are acutely aware you could be anywhere tonight, and we're so grateful you chose to be here with us. But a channel is nothing without you. So thank you so much to the viewer, and I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you tomorrow.
Everybody have a good night.